My God, it's been too long, friends. It's been too long since I saw that beautiful intro. Always incredible stuff. Lots happened since the last time we were together. WrestleMania dreams have come and gone. Late Night Grid has almost died, come back to life, died, maybe alive, don't know yet. So much has happened. But the Green Grappler rides again. Rowdy Roddy Piper is our subject. I'm excited for this one. A lot to talk about tonight. One of the great, kind of iconic characters in wrestling history, and one that personally I was less familiar with than a lot of the folks we've talked about. There he is, the big man in action figure form.
Shelf. Yeah, the WrestleMania 8 edition Roddy Piper. At the,
man, that is an incredible figure. That's
right
tremendous.
off the Mania shelf there. Yeah.
We're certainly going to talk WrestleMania 8 today. Folks, much to get into. Expert panel as always. The great Bobby Two Shoes alongside me here. Bobby, how are you, mate?
I'm doing well, man. I say it every month, but really enjoyed watching all these matches. Excited to get into it. I honestly probably enjoyed these more than most of them that we've done, and that's nothing against the other ones that we've done. I just, something about these 6 matches were just all really good to me.
Well, I think, we're going to get into this. Roddy is a unique candidate because I think by his own admission, he was never a wizard of the mat necessarily, right? And so what you get is even his greatest hits are not necessarily going to be 40-minute epics, right? And you kind of get that here as we'll get into. So I'm not surprised. Definitely was a fun watch. The Oracle of Wrestling. How are you, my friend?
I'm great.
Good.
I'm eating glizzies over here.
Internet dunk and glizzy dunk.
God, what a freeze frame!
Incredible. He looks happy though, right? Looks like one of those TW ones.
There you go.
Here he is. Yes, you're eating. Yes, carry on.
I think it's just like when I speak, it doesn't want me to speak.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's like,
where the hot dogs from? Cookout.
So my work did a cookout today.
Hell yeah!
So I had some burgers for lunch, and I took some hot dogs home.
My God, living the good life, brother. So you're good is the answer.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Alex, you all right, mate?
I don't have a hot dog, but yeah, I'm doing all right. I didn't realize Devin took his first indie booking. He got the hot dogs and the handshakes, but I'm doing well. Since we last met, a lot has happened in our respective worlds. Dreams have come and died in front of my very eyes. No, I look forward to this so much. So I'm glad to be back. And Piper is an interesting candidate. I got really excited when we landed on him for this one, and I think there's a lot of fun to be had and discussion here today. But as always, just good to be back with y'all and our adoring audience.
Absolutely, and it's worth noting, folks, a lot has changed here in the Grin headquarters, we'll say. But one thing that the Oracle and I were pretty consistent on from the outset when Oracle kind of adjusted us accordingly and said, let's keep it alive in some form or fashion. Oracle and I were very quick to say the grappler needs to go on. The grappler's a monthly thing. It's a chance for us to do a 3-hour post show of Alex. So we need, no, but seriously, we all love doing this show, and it's something that we can kind of easily sustain with the output we have. And honestly, in fear of patting ourselves in the back, I think it's a pretty nice little kind of nod to wrestling history's great characters, right? We've covered so many different wrestlers, so many different promotions, and it's been a hell of a ride, and it will not end tonight. At the end of this show, we will pick next month's wrestler, but for now, let's talk Roddy Piper. This starts as we always do. And this is going to be really interesting this week in terms of, this month, I should say. Usually we start with like our fandom for the wrestler, right, in question, and how we kind of became a fan, when we became a fan, so on and so forth. This one is interesting because, like, I don't know about, where Oracle and I've talked about a little bit, and Alex, I sense I know where you're going to go here, but for Bobby and I, in fear of talking for my friend Bob, I don't know if there is too much richness to that fandom. Bob, you kick us off, because I've got to say, Roddy's someone who I've only really grown to appreciate in the last couple of years. What about you, Bob?
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. Like, he came back when I started watching. He was on SmackDown for like the first half of 2003, and that kind of was what it was. And he'd pop up kind of throughout the 2000s, but like, as far as like getting really into him, no, I knew kind of the big stuff. Like, they showed the, hitting Snuka with the coconut all the time. They showed that Morton Downey thing all the time. But like, as far as matches go, no, like none of them were ever really kind of talked about or featured. And it's not until, a couple of years ago, you were able to see all the WrestleManias, kind of get into more WCW stuff, some older stuff, which we'll get into. And so it kind of evolved from there. So I was kind of first aware of him when he came back for SmackDown in 2003. But that obviously is a just much different version of him.
He's definitely a guy also that you need to see for yourself in terms of appreciating how big a star he was.
Yes.
He is not forgotten by any means. He's definitely, cited as one of the industry's great iconic figures, but I do think he's maybe not given quite the credit he deserves in terms of just how big a star he was. He's listed as one of the names rather than being, on that top tier, I think at times. I don't think that's necessarily fair. Oracle, we've talked about Roddy mostly in the kind of historical Oracle chapter of his career when he's more of a personality who would attempt to wrestle on occasion. Your fandom for Roddy Piper, mate, talk us through it.
So he was always, just one of those. He was one of those five names, He deserves to be in there with Hogan, Flair, and Savage, and Austin and Rock that are okay. You know who he is, and most people outside of wrestling fandom know who he is. Just a I've always found him to be entertaining, even when I was a kid when I would see him. Just because he was so charismatic. I didn't really begin to appreciate his work in the ring and whatnot until, I guess, my teenage years, college, when I started to watch older stuff, 80s WWF for a while. Saw late 70s, early 80s Portland, where he is amazing, and a bona fide megastar there. He's just he's one of those larger than life guys in wrestling, from the golden age of the 80s and 90s. One of those 6 or 7 names that pretty much everybody knows, even if they don't watch wrestling. And he's honestly one of my all-time favorites. I wouldn't rank him super high on a in-ring nerd list or whatever, but in just terms of enjoyment, I get a lot of enjoyment from him. Even his later promos are completely ridiculous. Some are awesome, and then some are just terribly stupid and offensive. But he's just, he makes you believe it,
Yeah.
He's I don't remember who said this on Twitter. Someone said it. It might have even been Alex, but I can't remember. But his performance in the 92 Rumble, there was one guy or somebody in the front where there was okay, all these other wrestlers, but Hot Rod was real. Roddy Piper was real. Someone said this years ago on Twitter, and someone was Roddy Piper's real, and that guy in that front row was he was reacting like Roddy Piper was real,
Yeah.
He was just one of those guys that made you that kind of gives you that authenticity that so many others just can't give you, even if they're really good in other ways.
Yeah, definitely a singular personality. Alex, where does your fandom start for Roddy? Where does it kind of escalate, so on and so forth, mate?
So went through phases with Piper, but I guess a thing about me as a wrestling fan that probably sounds weird to a lot of people is the classic Intercontinental title. When they, whenever Twitter or whoever does who do you associate this with? Roddy Piper always comes to mind for me, because my first vivid memory of watching a WrestleMania was WrestleMania 8. And around that time is when I have my first vivid memories of watching wrestling. And Piper had the Intercontinental title, so he's the first person I remember holding that belt. He had it for fucking 2 months, but and it's the only belt he ever won in the WWE. And right? They didn't do some weird shit.
Well, I think he won the tag belt with Flair in 2007.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well,
which, to be fair, Alex, I think you know me well enough to know I didn't like saying that, but Bob was about to do it, and I could not. It's my fault. But carry on.
Well, but yeah, and like Piper's just he's one of the guys that like my parents' friends and like adults, when I said I liked wrestling as a kid, would say, "Oh, Hulk Hogan, Roddy Piper, Jimmy Snuka," like,
Mhm.
or if the older ones would, Bruno, but it's he was one of those guys that had that level of popularity, and I remember, I just that '92 clean shaven with the golden locks, the They Live Piper. That's, to me, that's one of the all-time wrestling aesthetics. And we're going to end with WrestleMania 8, but him walking out with that belt and that kilt, like that's like a wrestler. Like his Hasbro gear basically is like what I think like a wrestler from that era is. And then he was referenced on The Simpsons, so that gave him a lot of like cred when I was a kid. Like even before the Roddy, when they call groundskeeper Willie Rowdy Keeper, that's several seasons before Bret Hart had it. So getting on here, obviously big horror fan. He's the star of a fucking John Carpenter movie. So like, with the exception of The Rock, you could argue that's like the highest level of fame a wrestler's attained in an acting role. And when I went through, like when I was in college and I was in my super, like, AJ Styles, Samoa Joe, super work rate, I always was like, Piper's one of those guys, man, that he wasn't that good. And then, you kind of grow out of that and, realize more or less what makes a good wrestler. And he's someone now that like, a friend of mine recommended me some of his Portland shit to watch a few years ago. And that was like seeing a new color for the first time. Like watching that, it was like, oh my God. And so he's someone that I've watched his catalog like at 3 different points in my life and interpreted him 3 different ways. So he's always an interesting name to visit, and he's one of the biggest names ever in the industry. He was a draw. And Devin, were you referencing Weird Promos, his Starcade 96 one, where he talks about using Roseanne Barr's bra as a yarmulke? That's one of the most unhinged promos I've ever seen.
Yes. Yeah, there's plenty of them. As I'm watching the build to Slamboree 97 now, there's plenty of classic Roddy, vintage Roddy.
That's another thing. As a kid, I remember his WWF run, and then when he showed up in WCW, I watched Halloween Havoc 96, and I can remember even like as a 9, 8, 10-year-old, whatever I was, like, what is he talking about? Just like, what is this guy going on about? And still watching it now, same thing.
Yeah, it's quite the deal. It's a great moment when he like emerges, and then as soon as he starts talking, it quickly falls off the rails, unfortunately. But that's there's a lot of, to me anyway, and Oracle have to kind of broadly on historical Oracle, but there is a charm to Roddy's WCW run, but there is an awful lot of them in the bell rang, unfortunately. There's some fun ones with Flair, but maybe we'll talk about a little bit later. Nonetheless, let's get rolling here. Before we do, shout out to Joe, who has resubscribed and was for 11 whole months now, and says, woo! Wrong show, pal. No, thanks, Joe. Appreciate you, brother. Let's get into it. Act 1, which is just kind of broadly pre-WWF, right? And it is worth noting that we're picking up pretty late into that part of Roddy's journey. When would you guys, I'm not as familiar on the Portland stuff, only seen clips. When would you guys say that Roddy became like a real player in wrestling in general? Because we're in the 70s at that point, right? When would you guys say, is there a sort of year you could throw out just to get some perspective on the length of his career?
Probably 78 or 79.
Okay.
Like right around the time that Buddy Rose and like the feud with Buddy Rose, San Francisco and Portland kicks in.
Did he team with Dynamite Kid in Portland? I feel like they did some shit together in Portland, right?
Yeah, there was a I can't remember. I think there was, if I'm not mistaken, there was a Roddy and Rick Martel tag versus Buddy Rose and Ed Wiskowski that is amazing in 1980.
Oh my God.
That's like an all-time great match from the 80s, and like probably like it's honestly one of the 20 best. Like, well, I'm not 20, but it's like one of the. It's one of the. I always embellish. That's but it's one of the like must-see Portland matches. Ed, for those who don't know, Ed Wiskowski was Colonel De Beers in AWA, but so Dynamite had a feud with Buddy Rose, but Piper, I think, might have been in some tags and six mans with him during that period.
Okay. Got ya. So, because we pick
Yeah,
up here,
that sounds about right.
we pick up here in July '82, and I wanted to kind of give some perspective on the stuff that comes before this. We start with an all-time piece of business that I had heard about but never actually watched until now. The July 10th, 1982 edition of Mid-Atlantic TV. Roddy's opposite Jack Briscoe here has stolen his belt. He's demanding $10,000 to wrestle him for the belt that he has stolen. Roddy he refuses the notion that this is $10,000 and seems almost mad that when he is actually forced in a situation where he almost seems stunned at the situation he's got himself into. It's incredible. This is like an opening block of TV. They go to the break, they come back with a straight up promo, and then they go to the match. And this is genuinely was compelling enough that I was like, fuck man, maybe I need to binge some of this stuff, Maybe I need to watch more of this. This was that good. And this match is fascinating in terms of its structure and layout. So much to get into here. Jack Briscoe, Roddy Piper, our first match, kicking off Act 1. Bobby, what did you make of it, mate?
The entire pre-match to set it up is awesome with Wahoo and Steamboat. I love that part. At first I'm like, this is just going to be kind of slow, and it was, but then it clicked for me. They did that kind of headlock spot that just stayed on for 3 minutes. I'm like, hey, this rules. And they did a lot with what they had here, and I think the finish is cool. You've never seen anyone use a roll of quarters that I can remember. And I liked it a whole lot, man. I thought it was awesome, and I didn't expect to like it as much as I did.
We definitely need to bring back the roller quarters for Bobby. We need to be seeing that on Raw. If Bob, that was a new one for you, Bobby, we need to bring it back, bro. We need
Hell
to.
yeah.
The headlock spot is incredible here. And especially so because there's a whole lot of mirroring going on throughout this match, right? There's Briscoe has the headlock and Piper back suplexes free. They brawl some, and then Piper grabs the sleeper hold and Briscoe back suplexes himself free. And they kind of go back and forth in this fashion. But throughout, they're a complete contrast because Briscoe is wrestling within the rules and Roddy is being Roddy. He's gouging, he's pulling up the hair, he's doing this, he's grabbing the tights, so on and so forth. Fascinating match. Oracle, I assume you'd seen this before. But regardless, what did you make of it, mate?
I actually haven't, I haven't seen much of Mid-Atlantic before 85 other than Starrcade 83. So that's actually kind of a blind spot for me. Anyways,
Bullet Club Gold.
But I'm familiar with the angle. I've never seen the match before. Until now, the match was amazing, man. All the amateur stuff and just the way that they were just struggling and showing so much intensity within the holds.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, man. That shit rules.
So gritty, right? It
Yeah,
had such a toughness.
it's so believable too,
Mm-hmm.
And it's always feels like a fight with Roddy, which we'll talk about a lot with them.
Yes.
Feels so personal, with his matches. And this was awesome. They were just getting down there on the mat and the whole headlock spot was incredible because they did it for 3 or 4 minutes, but just finding ways for Jack to keep it on, and it was just, I don't know, it's good stuff. And then they did a whole thing around the sleeper, and Piper was just finding ways to get out and rip the hair and spit and claw and scratch like he always does, and of course the finish is awesome and is I told you I'd do it, Roddy's classic promo after the match, but. Yeah, man, this was great shit. I'd never seen this before, but this was, this definitely delivered. This was excellent.
How great was Roddy's sell of that sleeper when he was doing the convulsing? We see it to this day. That's so hard to do in a way that doesn't completely kill especially for what they were going for here, because this was very much gritty and grounded and felt authentic. very hard to do what he did here and not kill that vibe. And he did it, man. I mean, this had a really striking feel. Alex, what did you make of this one, mate?
Yeah, agreed with everything that's been said thus far. I think it was the network dub of this I watched. I found it on YouTube, the whole show, but I know it wasn't the original theme, but they have the rights to that Jim Crockett,
Yes.
and dude, that's a banger right there. These are the things I take notes on, guys. The pre-match is great. I love when baby faces band together to see the heel get his comeuppance, and fucking Wahoo's fat ass and Ricky Steamboat looking like a porn star walk out, and they're like, "We'll put our money down just to see this happen." And it's so good how Piper counts it, and everyone plays their part so well because he's like, "You think I'm stupid?" And then Davy Crockett has that look of like, "Oh fuck, he figured it out. He can count," and it's excellent. And I think the reasoning is, what does Wahoo say? He's like, "You caught him on a short week with it Sunday at the bank or something." He comes up with some ridiculous excuse. It's wonderful. But yeah, this match, we talked about Jack Briscoe and like man's man wrestling when we did our Antonio Inoki episode. And, we talk about a lot, and, Joe and you and I specifically about like what this would look like if it was real. And, that's obviously there's so many ways pro wrestling is real. Could be interpreted, and if it was real, it would probably look like a Luthez 75-minute match. But like here, it has the feeling of a prize fight you're watching, that like tensions are starting to run hot and like fouls are coming at any second. Like when they break them up at the ropes and they're like huffing and puffing at each other, and it's wonderful. And yeah, the headlock's tremendous, and it's that basic just thought process of why would I let go of this if it's working so well. Why would I get pushed off easily if this was working so well? Piper, though, takes a walk on King's Road at one point with these chops he's laying in, man. He's opening up on Jack Briscoe. And, as we talked about, Jack was a 2 packs a day guy, so he was probably like, all right, take it easy on the chest, young man. Bob Caudle on the call, so like, it's the juxtaposition of the intensity of the ring with Bob Caudle. It's a lovely
looks
day.
like Ronnie here is
There's money all over the ring. Money all over the ring.
That was tremendous.
But yeah, and then afterwards I stuck around for a little bit when he interviews King Parsons. Like, we just saw a whale of a match. King Parsons, like, those two guys got down, man. It was excellent. But where did Piper get busted open? I rewound it.
No idea.
Rewound it 2 times and I couldn't figure out where it happened. I guess the headlock was just so vicious. And
I guess, yeah. Opened up a wound. I don't know, man. He was at one point he was just pouring blood. I was like, what?
That's back in those days when those guys were blading 3 days a week. I remember New Jack got busted open in a promo because he was yelling so loud one time. But it's so I guess that could just be it. He had a fresh gig mark and he was wrenching it in. But the roll of coins, I remember Tully Blanchard did that once, and I think Steve Corino did it in a match one time. But aside from that, and I guess fucking Juice Robinson, but it's like, why don't more people do that? It's visually fantastic. Like when you have like the roll of coins explode, I don't know. I guess it's too soon with the Jacques Rougeau Dynamite Kid thing, but I don't know.
If that was the reason, that would be so awesome. Like the idea of like Jason Jordan telling him they can't do it, man. Fucking Jacques can't do it.
That's like, because Vince still has the most random weird rules, and so like that'd be it. Like to me, when we say that out loud, knowing how weird that company is, it doesn't seem outside of the realm of possibility. But
it's fair.
Fantastic match.
Yeah, I'm glad you called out the chops because there's this great moment in the match where after he finally gets out of the headlock, it's almost like you can see Roddy make the decision of like, absolutely not wrestling this dude's match anymore. Like, I'm now going to brawl. This is enough with that. That went about as poorly as I should have expected. Man, it's very hard to talk about a match like this without becoming like a cliche machine. And I don't want to do the thing of they made everything count and they slept. But man, there are some lessons to be learned here. And It's like you mentioned earlier, Alex. Kind of, you have that point in your fandom where you go the whole way around. So it's like you get into kind of the moves, and you're like, oh, maybe Roddy Piper sucked. And then when you've actually watched enough wrestling, you figure out how it works. You realize that the moves are like the least important part. And again, folks, I know that sounds like fucking Disco Inferno talk, but like, it's true to an extent, right? I mean, like, when you see how much juice they get out of like 4 different things here, that's wrestling, man. It doesn't mean that more moves aren't wrestling. It doesn't mean that's not, real professional wrestling. It just means that the connection is what matters. And in this 20 minutes, they tell you a story that's so compelling that you're sitting there watching this headlock completely gripped by it. It's like they use like 4 ingredients for this thing. It works perfectly. It's just it's wonderful.
That is
genuinely, it's just so compelling. Go ahead, Alex.
No, yeah. One, Ben called out. It was like on the tip of my tongue. I couldn't figure it out. That was it. Bockwinkel
Yes.
Henning is the roll of quarters, and that's what you were explaining, and what I agree with to a certain extent. I'm not going to get mad about it for real, but like
that's the Cow Palace, right? In
Yeah.
87.
Yeah, when Hennig turns, right?
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, Alex. I was.
Hey, good going.
you're good, man. This is what we do here. But like that's exactly why that generation of guys saw like fucking Sabu or whoever and was like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
And because it's like you guys are really hurting yourself and doing way too much when really all you need to do is this. And I still maintain the most recent main event of WrestleMania, both nights, you can just say it's still this. Like you just have to just work it that simply. Obviously now people come to expect sprinkle in a little Ricochet on the card or whatever, but this is a tried and true example of like where those sentiments come from wrestlers and bitter old fans. It's just like you can watch this, and this is what, almost 40 years old, or is 40 years old,
Over 40 now, yeah.
yeah, and all 4 of us were just like, fine piece of business, wonderful match.
Yeah, I think the actual lesson in this particular episode is the true secret, recipe, the true hidden gem to all of it is getting over, man. That's once you get over, you can do, man, in every one of these matches, Roddy does that fucking thing where he puts his hand behind his head and throws jabs. They pop every time, man.
Yeah.
And boy, do his working punches range from God tier to any one of us could do them.
In the Brett match, there's like a 15-second clip where he does that exact range just in those 15 seconds, and it's like, and the point I'm making is, if you get over the way that he got over, your work can be as loose as. I mean, this match is not an example of that, but we're going to get into some of this stuff. Is not exactly, not exactly Flair Steamboat. To put it lightly, it's like you get over. You could do some incredible things with very, very little, which we'll get into as we go here. But this match is extraordinary, absolutely.
To put a pin on that, and that
Yes.
goes beyond the level of Roddy Piper. Like a great example, fucking Sandman. Sandman could show up anywhere and do his shit, and it was awful, but people liked it because he was over. You get over, you're over. You stay over. You can show up anywhere and do the same shit, and people will cheer for you.
Absolutely. It's
Well, look at Dusty Rhodes. Now, I mean, Dusty
Yeah.
was actually a pretty good worker, but still, I mean, Dusty go over there and do
Yeah.
the damn.
It's
That's
one
the
of the
whole, like,
reasons
yeah.
wrestling's so interesting, right? It's like
Yeah.
no match starts from the same point. They all have different. They're different. Every match is different based on the investment in each guy.
It troubles me that there's a generation after me because I don't like feeling old, but that's the whole like thing that people don't like, younger fans, when they say Sid sucked, he only did the same thing in every match. It's like, that's because it's all he had to do, because everywhere he went, people
Yeah.
went nuts for him. He was fucking Sid. And I guess that's, yeah, because that, the narratives that WWE perpetuate about learning how to change and adapt, and like you could say Piper had different looks, to bring it back to what we're talking about. He came out with different looks from time to time and would kind of, he wouldn't even really adjust it. He just always did the same like promos, but like it's just about knowing what the crowd wants from you and doling that out slowly to a point of crescendo.
It's just him to suck. Like he's the only person who can be this particular person, right? Like he's one of one in that regard. Same with Dusty. Like
One
they're
thing that
singular.
made me think of it, and we'll talk about it. We'll see it in the later matches. Is like Piper always has like this, like murderous look on his face when he comes out of the curtain, and it's
Mhm.
amazing.
Yeah, he's
And
great at the way he carries himself, man. Like
it's awesome.
I love one of the things in this match, to quickly circle back to the Briscoe match. The whole match is defined by those first 15, 20 seconds. Every time they lock up and break up, did you notice Briscoe was pushing forward with this kind of poise and Roddy's always backing up? It's not because he was cowering, it's because he's like cunning, right? Like in that one visual of Briscoe attacking and Piper backing off, you get the whole match's identity, basically. They're mirroring each other, but one of them is going to cheat and do anything possible to get ahead, and the other one is going to try and win a wrestling match. And it's like that's the match. That's the whole story of the match defined in a click of a finger. So, tremendous piece of business. Okay, we move now a year ahead. Starrcade, the first Starrcade. I think even with Flair for the Gold, this is like the most famous match from that Starrcade. Probably until recent times, the undeniable, like the dog collar match. I think that's now going to be kind of something people debate, which fair enough. Piper and Valentine. There was a great promo on AEW TV that referenced this match a couple of years ago that I'm still legit. I guess it was a year ago. It feels longer. Look, genuinely, that is maybe Punk's best line, right? On doing that on Valentine's Day week, whenever that it was Valentine's Day week, was it Valentine's Day? I forget, but he had his Valentine. Now will you be mine? That was an incredible piece of business, and it got a lot of people going back to this one. I've seen this match an awful lot because it's a very, very famous one, and every single time I go back to it, I pop at just how brutal this is, man. The work on the ear is like horrifying at times.
Mm-hmm.
Greg brings it on that front. Alex, I'm sure you'd seen this before, dog collar match, Valentine and Piper. What did you make of it on this latest revisit?
Yes, have seen this before. Oh yeah, has WWF ever done a dog collar match, or they just always do like strap matches?
Yeah, I don't think they have.
Wow.
For some reason, that was like my first thought. I was wondering about that. Yeah. Every time I watch this, I'm like, God, this must have sucked to be in, because even like when there's that part where Piper's like doubled over the chain and is hitting Valentine, and Valentine's like got both his arms up and blocking it. That still had to hurt like fuck, man. Getting a real chain banged on your arms, and then the end where he's just wearing them out with it, and it's I do miss the idea of limbs, blading limbs.
Yes.
Like. Because Dusty and those old timers have those fucking shredded, like the top of their arms are
Vader,
awful.
and remember, Vader bladed his arm in the strap match with Sting.
Who did that on Dynamite? Was it Jericho that did that a couple
Yeah.
years ago?
Yeah,
It's Gage, right? Wasn't it Nick Gage?
I think it was actually, yes.
Again, I know what you guys are saying actually happened, but it just sounds
I know.
insane.
It's kind of awesome. Anyway, carry on.
No, you're good. Edge did it that one time with the
or
Foley match.
you can be Kerry Von Erich and accidentally blade your arm.
Different thing. Very different.
Doing some blow off the razor, and then oh god,
Even more different thing.
yeah, this is just, I mean, honestly, when this match starts and it cuts to the hard cam, that's one of the all-time professional wrestling aesthetics. You got Valentine and Piper with a dog collar, NWA on the mat, the like smoke billowing kind of over everything going on, and the crowd just going nuts. I had forgotten that their introductions consist of their 1976 Saturday Night Live headshots that fly into frame. I
That is
thought
incredible. Yeah.
it's so good too, because Piper's is like, welcome back Cotter smiling and shit, and then Greg Valentine's like his mugshot, like all super serious. It's excellent. More Bob Caudle. He's having a good time with this. It's Bob and Gordon, so God, dream team right there. What else do I have? Valentine, very underrated flop. Everyone goes to the Flair flop, but Valentine had a fantastic one. And a match that you can't really say more about it than has already been said, but yeah, like as far as like American hardcore wrestling goes, this was like the benchmark for a long ass time. This and Magnum and Tully's I Quit match were like, that was what America had to go against some of the barbed wire, like the early Onita shit in Japan. So it's historical in that sense. I think it still holds up. I could see people who are just used to kind of the modern style of like hardcore matches kind of being like, well, let's go. But it's, I'd argue the first Starrcade wouldn't have been half as special without this. And like you already said, like the flair for the gold was the draw, but this is also when we're talking about like Piper picking up like national or becoming a player in the industry, the way the crowd reacts to him in this match and specifically at the end where he stands triumphant is like, he was an established star at this point. And so naturally he'll fall into place with what's coming up next.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I should have noted that this is post babyface turn. If anyone's never seen it before, I recommend that there's a YouTube compilation of Roddy turning babyface, and it's a deal with Ole Anderson, right? Where Ole is sort of he's irritated by something Roddy did, and Roddy is taunting him as you would expect him to, and Ole's and the place just rumbles. It's an incredible deal. But yeah, the opening visual, that kind of tug of war situation they're in, where they're like just pulling each other's heads back. Oh, I mean, that talk about establishing a gimmick immediately, a stipulation immediately. I mean, that does that in an instant. One quick thing I want to shout out too before I throw it to Bobby was how cool was that like deal where he trapped him in the corner? You know, and like wrapped the chain around the post and he was kind of stuck. I think Punk did that with Max or something to that effect, right? They did something similar. I couldn't recall, but the way they did it here, it really jumped off the page. So there was some really nice creative stuff here. Bobby, what did you make of the dog collar? Firstly, had you ever seen it before?
No, this is the first time I saw it. I've seen the two Punk dog collar matches and obviously the Briscoes and FTR, but this is the first time I've seen this one.
Wow.
I loved it, man. Like it was brutal and violent, but like in such a different way than I think the other three I mentioned are. Just like wrapping the chain around their heads or their eyes or stuff like that is just as effective because you can think of what that feels like, and like it's not pleasant, and this would not be a good situation to be in. Yeah, just a brawl, man. It was awesome. They both were bleeding quite a bit, and I loved it. It's got me wanting to go back and kind of watch. I think they have a couple other matches that are.
They have the one in July is really great.
Yeah.
The one that
that one I was going to check out. Yeah, but yeah, it was awesome.
Is there a wrestler who is truly underrated and appreciated like Greg Valentine that so many people will say without ever having watched Greg Valentine wrestle how underappreciated and underrated he was?
He was, he was the real deal, but you're right.
Great wrestler, man.
It's so weird. He's definitely one of, like, it's the Cesaro hot tag. Like every once in a while, someone will put on Twitter, like, Greg Valentine was so underrated. It's like, yes, he was, but let's talk about why that was.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like, he's in the Hall of Fame and he gets his flowers here and there, but I don't, this is coming from a place of me unsure if enough people out there know how fucking great he was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's like when I guess the point is when they say they think he was underrated, it's because they remember him like, being a guy in the WWF, and he was a guy in the WWF for a very long time, was very good at it, but he was like a genuinely great wrestler for the generation. Like he was not just like a nice little role player underneath. You look at him here and it's like, it's incredible, man. And again, I want to say once the chat's talking about it,
the Tito Santana feud is unbelievable.
Yes.
Every one of the matches are great. Like literally,
he's also
great.
He was like, my favorite thing about him was if you watch his Japan shit, for the most part, he still just did like NWA style matches, but the crowd still loved him. It's like, oh, it's Greg Valentine. But I know we're talking about Piper, but every time I watch Valentine, I'm just like, man, this guy really got every facet of it. He was second generation, but that obviously does not always transfer. Mike Von Erich, and so Valentine, great wrestler.
Absolutely. My one gripe with this match, I've always thought the finish was a little unsatisfying, a little kind of. I don't want to call it tame because it's not tame, but the match is so violent from start to finish that I always felt it could have used just a slight escalation to hit that final note. But that's a little thing.
Do you like the finish of Rock and Austin from 17? People always find not Vince and Austin joining, but the actual
shots.
Yeah.
I do, but only because they get that great shot of Austin's like face when he's swinging the chair. You know the
Yeah.
shot they're using the slow-mo replay where he looks like an actual killer, like an actual like he's swinging it and you see his eyes. Yeah, I think it's because this is so the violence and brutality is so consistent that by the end it almost I don't want anything phony or stagey. I don't need anything dramatic or cinematic. I think a slight escalation would have kind of hit home a little extra hard. But I don't know. It's just that's a small thing. Oracle, what did you make of the dog collar match, mate?
Yeah, this is still a classic. Just the production of this is great, and like the way they just put over the gimmick is just tremendous stuff. Like you mentioned, Joe, when they were like literally like two dogs, basically, like trying to get off a leash, and then of course it's total bloodbath. The close-up shots of this legit chain being wrapped around their face. Oh my god! And there's one great part where like they have like the big brawl or like they're punching back and forth, whatever, and they get like a double knockdown or something. And Piper falls to the mat and he's wrapped around in the chain, and the chain is wrapped around his mouth as he's on the ground. And it's like, what the fuck?
When Piper's behind Valentine, has it going through his mouth, and Valentine's like screaming. That's like mid '80s horror VHS box art.
Yeah, and it's like you can tell just by looking. I mean, it's a big ass chain, man. Like, of course, Piper's ear is just fucking gushing blood, and like Valentine's work over it is awesome. I don't disagree with you on the finish, Joe, but I will say that that's not unusual for an 80s stip finish.
Yeah. Sure.
That's why people praise the end of Tully and Magnum so much, because of its, sort of visceral ending.
Yeah.
I just rewatched that again recently. That is so brutal, dude. That's like one of the most metal things ever.
Yeah.
To be fair though, the screaming in that adds a certain drama, right? To that finish, the screaming is in like an incredible moment in wrestling history. But I'm with you absolutely.
But yeah, I think this holds up. It doesn't overstay its welcome. And for what it's worth, I like the dog collar matches of the last few years a lot, but this one's still better for me. Mostly because they know how to put the gimmick over really well, and they keep it tight and focused, and don't most matches, most feud enders today go like. That's why I like Punk and Kingston so much, because
that is honestly,
like all these feud enders today have to go 20 minutes or more. It's like you don't have to go 20 minutes or more.
It's funny you bring that up because I was actually going to say Eddie and Punk was more like this than Max and Punk was, ironically, even with the dog collar. Because Max and Punk very much worked it like it was more dramatic, right? It was like an extended epic almost. It was more story than sheer violence, even though there was an awful lot of blood, and there was a lot of blood. I certainly remember that. But yeah, this is more like what he did with Eddie. I think Briscoes and FTR got pretty close to this in terms of the vibe, but you can't really compare. Exactly.
You can add a few more minutes in a tag match, but
yes, yeah, you can't compare when it's a tag because you could do an awful lot of things with that. But a couple of quick notes on this, just to capture how nuts wrestling was. They took this match like on the road, sort of. After this, they did 8 dog collar rematches over the next 5 weeks.
Jesus,
which I'm sure they didn't go this hard every time, but like it's a dog collar match. I mean, it's still insane. Piper heads to the WWF 2 months later in January, and Greg I think follows in March. So like we are right, like that's coming up real close. I also would like to shout out the great Hammer. Poor Greg talking about this match explains that he recently rewatched it for the A&E documentary about Roddy Piper, and he says, that match was 40 to 45 minutes long. And the interviewer doesn't say anything, and he's like, because back then, unless it was TV, I didn't wrestle 10 to 20. Every night was 40 to 60. And that the day that wrestlers stopped lying about time is the day we close this thing down, man. He said he watched the match last year and he still claims it's 45 minutes. That is real wrestling, It doesn't get any better. Beautiful.
Did you guys
Uh,
catch Triple H saying he defended the WWE title against John Cena at WrestleMania 22 last
I
night?
did not,
Bobby,
but-
Bobby, did you catch that?
You did.
He did not defend the title. He challenged for the championship.
You
Anyways,
did.
Piece of
That's
shit.
Hogan, like the Laps fans doing a transcript of his deposition with his back doctor, and there's one where he's like, "In my prime, I was wrestling up to 420 times a year."
What about when he says okay, we're gonna veer off here, but quickly. What about when he goes, TNA is not a wrestling company?
There's a part where he's like, "So was TNA the focus?" Oh no, TNA was always an afterthought.
I didn't know how close he was to wrestling Senior at Mania, how much that was a thing they wanted to do. I had no idea. No clue. WrestleMania 25. Wow.
Is there any, like, besides Hogan, like, is there ever anyone that said that was really in the works?
I don't know. I'm
never-
rolling with it, man. It sounds nuts.
I never heard about it.
Yeah,
Okay. Fucking scoops the bob up there, shooting it down. Why would Hogan lie about that? He never lies. What are you talking
Well,
about?
yeah, but like the Hogan Austin stuff, that was like an annual rumor for a few years. This one is the first I'm hearing about it.
It was
Yeah.
like, I remember I was kind of already on the internet at that point. No Way Out 2002, and people are like, "Why did Austin shoot down working with Hogan?" And then at WrestleMania, it was like, because he saw that coming.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a hell of a play. Hell of a play.
Brother.
Nonetheless, let's put a bow on Act 1 here. Any other matches to shout? I've got the, I wanted to, I've already said the Greg one, so that's really all I had. Is anything else come to mind for you guys? You're more familiar with the pre-WWF stuff, so I was intrigued. Any matches from Act 1 that you'd like to shout?
Yeah, the Portland stuff, which I couldn't recite page and verse at this point, but YouTube is such a tremendous resource in that you just Googled Devin froze looking like fucking Undertaker's entrance. I got scared there for a second.
oh yeah, when I was looking up in the
Yeah.
I was looking up in the sky there.
But my recommendation is, I've spent many a night just kind of sitting on the couch and watching montages on YouTube or, episodes of TV, Portland wrestling around his time. And then also, Devin, you might be able to help me out with this. I posted in preparation for this the promo he did with Rick Martel where he smashes the beer bottle on his head when they were feuding with the sheep herders. I can't remember which company or territory that was in at the time, but I remember all of that being just a lot of fun because in light of his recent passing, Bushwhacker Butch will just say that if you've never seen any of the sheep herders work and all you're familiar with is the Bushwhackers, it's like fucking night and day. So start there, Rick Martel.
Those
And
dudes could brawl and bleed and fucking kick ass.
Yeah, absolutely.
you know what they were meant to do though? Dance and eat sardines.
Right.
And lick lick the foreheads of children, I guess.
Fair. Well, on that note, we will move to Act 2. This is, of course, the first WWF run, the kind of famous heel run that I think is how Roddy is kind of most remembered historically, right? I think he's generally as Hogan's like great antagonist and rival and foe. And this is kind of that time frame here. And we start with War to Settle the Score, which is a very famous deal with. It was the MTV show, right? It was a one-off single match, episode event on MTV. It was the Rock and Wrestling Connection, all that good stuff. Cyndi Lauper, I'm sure you know the deal by now, folks. That will come back round for the finish. We were talking through in our preparation for this, being the pros we are. We sit down and we throw some matches out there, and we was like, what? I think I just straight up, I was like, are any of the Hogan matches like good? I was like, what should we do? We just kind of concluded, look, they're all the same match. You know exactly what you're going to get with these matches. Piper's not going to lose any of them. You know that much for sure. War to Settle the Score. It's a moment in time. It's the one to go with. And that's what we did here. There are some iconic visuals in this pre-match. Some visuals that genuinely they have used forever since, right? Like the one with them, with Hogan coming out, with Cyndi. They use that to this day.
Mhm.
It has a hot brawl to start. And it is absolutely the match you're imagining it being. If you've never seen it, you have seen it. I'm telling you, you've seen it. Whether you have or not, you've definitely seen it. But that's okay because this is the kind of match that made that formula a thing that we all know anyway, we're being real. So you can't really knock it for that. Oracle, what did you make of it, mate? War to Settle the Score, even though no score was actually settled.
This is fun, It just
Yeah.
Piper gets the shit kicked out of him. Then there's a ref bump, and then Piper beats the shit out of Hogan, and then there's like interference from Orndorff. Orndorff's top rope knee looked awesome, by the way.
He did.
Mr.
Beast.
T gets in there, and then Piper just beats the shit out of him, and it ruled. And then like
Yeah,
Cindy
Gorilla.
Lauper comes up on the apron and like just sort of like yells at Roddy, and
Bro, when-
whole melee. It's a whole melee. And then the cops and everybody, it's an awesome visual where they swarm and hold everybody back because T goes after
Dude.
Piper.
Dude, and not to be like the Attitude Era fan or anything like that, but can you imagine like being a wrestling fan and watching this in real time? Like, what the fuck? Like, there's no internet or anything, and so like Mr. T jumps in the ring, and this was obviously the setup for WrestleMania.
Right.
Yeah.
There was no Grin Grappler telling you where to turn back in those days, so you would have had no idea. And I just like the way this plays out. Yeah, sorry to cut you off, but it has that feeling of like, put yourself back in time watching this on MTV, and then it just cuts off and ends, and then fucking Wang Chung starts playing.
But I bring this up on this show like all the time. I brought it up on here several times, but Piper being like, "Don't work for me, brother," to Hogan of all people, every single time without fail is legendary.
Oh yeah.
He should be lauded and praised for that. For all the
It's
shit
incredible,
Hogan pulled over the years, Piper's like, "Not today, pal."
What a
just like,
character.
that's art, man. That's special right there.
I've got to call out when Cindy Lauper gets on the apron, Gorilla like everyone's having a great time, and Gorilla just yells like she's gonna get killed. And then Mr. T makes the save, and he's like, he don't belong in that ring. Like Gorilla was he seemed so concerned that something really traumatic was going to happen to everyone. It was really quite the ordeal. Incredible atmosphere for this. Bobby, have you ever seen this before? And what did you make of it?
No, I had not seen it before. It wasn't on the WWE Network. I don't know if it's on Peacock. I ended up just watching it on Daily Motion or whatever.
It's
but,
on the Roddy Coliseum video.
Oh, okay. Okay.
They put it on the network for like a day.
Yeah.
And then because I think there's still, that's like where the whole Velocity catalog's not up, and Heat also, because I think there's some
Oh yeah.
MTV and WWE pissing that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no, I had never seen it. I thought the match is what it is, but like just the spectacle, and Bob Costas is there, and Danny DeVito and Joe Piscopo, and just all the stars of the time, man. And I'd never really thought about like, they didn't have weekly TV at this time. How did they set up WrestleMania? And now I know. So yeah, it was fun.
It's also, I mean, just on the surface, MTV is a fucking insane place for this match to air.
Oh yeah.
You also have to remember that wrestling had not been like a national television. It was always a regional television thing.
And we have to talk about the year it was on MTV. This isn't like 2005, and this is 1985 MTV, where like every person 40 years, between the ages of like 10 and 40 are fucking watching MTV in 1985.
We had just come off the Video Music Awards where Madonna did like a version on the stage that like changed the entire trajectory of that channel. And so, yeah, sorry, I kind of geek out on MTV history a lot of the time. If you haven't seen that performance, it's awesome. Dan Aykroyd introduces her, and then when it's over, she's like picking her clothes up off the stage, and the crowd just kind of stunned silent. And then the announcer's like, "Coming up next, Crosby, Stills, and Nash."
No, I think that context is worthwhile, because I do think some people will not quite grasp how big a deal this was. A preposterous situation. Alex, I'm sure you'd seen this before. I know we talked about it a little bit, but what did you make of it on Revisit, mate?
Yeah, and I was the one that kind of pushed for this when we were piecing together the playlist, and it's very imperative that you watch the original broadcast of this, because any re-airing immediately replaced Eye of the Tiger with Real American, and I'm already getting chills thinking about this. You cannot do it any better than it does this. As far as like in a movie, you would think that's amazing. Also, props to Captain Lou for still milking all the goodwill he had with Senior to get a spot here where he comes out with fucking Hogan. But when Hogan comes out to Eye of the Tiger, when it's kicking up, and he like does that thing where Mr. T's just a fan there, and they rev each other up, and he's, "Go get him, brother." And when he gets in the ring, as Eye of the Tigers crescendoing. Hogan's ripping his shirt off, and Piper's ripping his skirt off, or excuse me, the Bobby Heenan to me coming out there, his kilt, and they run at each other and clash right as like it's the Eye of the Tiger. It's like one of the most preposterously awesome things you could find in wrestling. But yeah, the match is not much. It's more about just the context of it. So they had done the Brawl to End It All 6 months or so before this on MTV, where that was where Wendy Richter beat Moolah, I believe. And so this was War to Settle the Score. The event shirt for this is like the holy grail of wrestling merchandise collecting. And it was the highest rated show in the history of MTV at that point. And this, to me, this is like as much fun as the WrestleMania 1 main event is, the atmosphere for this is more intense. Yeah, and also like the diversity in the crowd is just baffling, especially by like modern standards. There's like old dudes in suits, little kids, you know, different minorities and ethnicities everywhere. But they're all just going batshit. Like when Hogan starts working his comeback and stuff. And is it 8 minutes, if that? And it's basically every interaction Piper had with Hogan, which Devin just explained. Hogan wins, ref goes down, Piper wins, then schmoz, and we go home, and Piper doesn't get pinned. So I don't believe beyond that I had too much to note on it, but like, besides Bob Costas, just, you know, to put it over the top as the ring announcer for this. This is the peak. I know the literal first WrestleMania came, but to me, this is the peak moment, just if you contextualize everything of the rock and wrestling era.
Yeah, special. There's definitely a you used the word intense. It has kind of a fight atmosphere, right? Which is something that we talk about a lot, being a thing of yesteryear that we don't get anymore. Definitely feels like you're about to see heavyweight title fight at the Garden, which, frankly, that's what it was to some of the folks in the audience, right? I mean, that was what they were there to see. It was a very different time, and it reflects in the atmosphere for sure. Even, you know, we return to the Garden later in Act 3, and it's like, you can tell that the audience has adjusted to what the WWF has been in those 6 years, whatever it is. You know, like it's just a different wrestling world by that point, to say the least. But
I believe also for the MTV note, I believe this was the last show they did because MTV. It was something like MTV was like, okay, well, we should start getting a cut of this money that this is generating.
That's what it was.
And I think Vince then argued, no, you should be giving us your cut. I know there was something insane. Like at one point he was just like, well, I'll just buy MTV or something. But yeah, this is you think about that. It was just like the perfect blend of the time. Yep. And even like with the Attitude Era, the people that romanticize that, there still wasn't something like that. It was just kind of like crazy wrestling. This was MTV and WWF coming together, and yeah, worked out well for all involved, and is a huge part of the reason that Piper and Hogan would have been one of those guys regardless, but a lot of Piper's legacy comes from this MTV relationship and his kind of immortality. And then also, like I was joking, Captain Lou obviously played a part. There's a reason people still parody him on Saturday Night Live and shows. And like I remember Workaholics had a joke about Captain Lou, and a big part of that, he was in the Girls Just Want to Have Fun music video, and he was it was just a big era.
Yeah, it's crazy to look back on. You know, like, and I'm not, you know, we do have a fair bit of it used to be better around here. But that isn't, you know, like I enjoy wrestling for what it is. But when you see something, it is kind of incredible. You read some of the numbers, the viewership. The biggest one to me is the Hogan Andre deal they did on NBC, which is, what was the viewership for that? It was like some absurd
33 million people or whatever.
33 million. 33 million.
Yeah, it's like that is to me, from my experience as a wrestling fan, that's unfathomable. Like I genuinely don't understand what that even means. That's like I can't. It's ridiculous to me. So,
well, the one I found, I was Googling this in real time while we were doing this. The one I found, this isn't confirmed, but the one I found for the War to Settle the Score, the TV rating was a 9.1.
Yeah. It's ridiculous. It was a different time, folks. It was a different time. Okay. There you go. War to Settle the Score. We jump a year ahead now to and actually, in fairness, not nearly as much as the Hogan one, but a pretty famous deal with Bruno Sammartino, right? They had a segment of the Garden that is on YouTube for sure. I remember doing an article about like kind of the talk shows in WWF history, and this is a really significant one. Bruno is on Piper's Pit at MSG, and that goes about as you'd expect, considering everything you know about their personalities, and it inevitably gets physical. And they do a few things in the months between, and there's a couple tag matches, they do a couple singles matches, but this is the blow off. This is the end of that little kind of off TV is a weird thing because this was on like the local Boston, it was on, but not really, right? It's kind of a thing for events' sake, which is what wrestling was then. So it's always a little more complicated, but nonetheless.
Like these and the MSG Network ones weren't really factored into canon, if I remember correctly. Yeah.
Canon was just the thing is WWF canon was very different then anyway, because so much of what you were trying to do was drive people to the live events. It was like it's a weird. People struggle with that now, where it's like there are programs that are not blown off on pay-per-view necessarily because that wasn't really the point, right? They were equals almost for a while there. But nonetheless, we're at Boston Garden here and inside the steel cage, and Piper immediately is getting heat with some sports team business. Chicago Bears, am I correct, Bobby? I'm not an expert on this one. There's some memorabilia. He's hanging it up on the cage. It was an incredible touch. They go to work, and something happens in the first minute or so of this match that is so funny. I had to pause the match and rewind. I stayed on it for about 10 minutes. It made me laugh so much. And then about half an hour before we went live, Alex messaged the exact thing that I was laughing at. So, as you can see from the fellas gesturing here, now look, folks, it is what it is. We're not here to pull back the curtain too far. It's not our business, right? We're just observing. However, in the first 30 seconds of this match, Bruno throws Piper into the cage 3 times. And every single time he throws into the cage, Roddy brings his arm up, goes from one side of his head to the other. And each time, it's more expansive. He adds like a flair to it almost. His arm is sort of... he does it 3 times, and it's funny enough the first time, right? Because it's the first thing you see in the match. It's the opening spot of the match. But he throws him into the side of the cage, and he keeps doing it. I'd never seen it like he certainly got the job done. He was pouring blood.
Yeah.
But that really sets the tone. The one thing I'd say about this is I enjoy this for you is your mileage will absolutely be decided by like how much you like the escape to win thing. If you don't like escape to win cage matches, this will not do a lot for you because the last 4 minutes of the 8 minutes are just them like racing to the door and pulling each other out. I don't mind it. I'm not a big fan, but I don't hate it as much as some do. Bob, what do you make of that step as a cage? That's always a topic people debate, right? Like, what do you make of the escape to win? And then what did you think of this match in particular?
Yeah, I don't really love the escape to win. I am more on board with the cage being there to kind of keep people out instead. This one was fine. Like, it was short enough. Bruno doesn't really have it anymore at this point, but it's a cool match that it happened, I guess. It's 2 top guys all time. And, the Piper stuff you talked about was funny. I popped for the Bears stuff. It was inoffensive. Like, it isn't my favorite match we watched, but it was fine.
Great atmosphere, right?
Yeah.
A great atmosphere. There's some nice stuff here. Oracle, what did you make of it, mate?
Yeah, our friend Alex, John Keating was at this show.
Yes, you're right. Yeah.
Oh,
Greg
yeah.
Bolo was at the show. Yeah. So to put a little context on the stuff with the Bears posters, about a week or 2 before this, the Chicago Bears, their legendary '85 team, beat the New England Patriots.
They did.
Super Bowl. So that's where the heat garnered from. There was Piper taunting the Patriots and Boston fans there. This one's just a super fun match. Piper's blade job is like legendary. I remember watching it years ago. I watched this 15 years ago, maybe, or like close to it, and just watching it and going, "Oh my god!" Like, he just obviously bladed like the first minute in the match. It's so obvious, and that like never left me, and that's kind of and I had seen their other tags and stuff, which were also fun, but made me kind of want to put this match on there because it's a lot of fun. It's a feud ender. It's a unique feud. It's a way for us to get Bruno on here. Piper working the second half of the match with his ass out because Bruno.
That's incredible.
Piper's just like running into the cage and tackling Bruno, trying to make saves from the escape with his ass hanging out. just 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 a super fun match. Bruno doesn't do too much. He does a modest blade job. I think himself, and just basically spends the match, throwing Piper around. But I also like the spot where he got I think it was the Jim McMahon poster and shoved it in Piper's pants. And
Yes.
yeah, this is a fun feud that I watched a lot of when I was watching 80s WWF a while back, and there's some very offensive Piper promos in this program.
Mm.
But he definitely gets his comeuppance here, and I always like the finish where Bruno gets the chair and hits Piper, and then he like falls into the camera guy on his way out the door. But just a super fun match. Probably not great by any means, but still a total blast in my eyes.
We had that conversation a while back, about half an hour ago, maybe, about how once you're over, you don't have to do a lot. Bruno, man.
Mm-hmm.
Bruno's fucking punches ain't even good, But he, at one point, he beats Roddy up a little, and he walks around the cage and he just looks at people like this, and they just fucking roar. This is Bruno, right? Who gives a shit? He's not really doing much, but it's Bruno, man. It doesn't matter. He's working with different rules by this point. Alex, what did you make of the cage match?
Yeah, I'm sure I'd seen this before. It's always interesting to watch Bruno matches. I've probably seen less, at most 5 matches from his heyday, and that takes what we're talking about earlier. It takes a lot of putting yourself in the mindset of the fan at that time, and dude, his punches are bad. I like the setup he would do where he would grab behind the head and then go in for it. That kind of was cool, but shit like that, and it's that weird era of wrestling, kind of, Bruno would have been the get out of the way old man to Lou Thesz, where it was the strikes were way more theatrical than the grappling era. So the way Bruno wrestles and the way Roddy Piper wrestle seem like they should clash dramatically, and they kind of do. But again, it's hard to get mad at an 8-minute match, and it's hard to really start dissecting much from that when this match was over. When I saw the finish coming and Bruno got out of the cage, my thought was immediately, that was all right. But then when Bruno's feet hit the ground, the crowd goes fucking nuts. And in the immortal words of Jimmy King in Ready to Rumble, he says, well, the crowd liked it. And, that's really all that matters with a lot of these, because they're the people that are going to come back and pay for tickets and all that shit. Did mark hard for the scoreboard telling the crowd to chant for Bruno. You could see Bruno flashing in the background. I thought that was just absolutely fantastic. And aside from that, Bruno, he punches Piper in his taint. It's not his balls. He uppercuts him right in the gooch, and I'm sure that's devastating. So Piper went down like a sack of potatoes, and that's such a classic finish. That the guy's almost out and he doesn't want to go back, so he scrapes for anything that's at his grasp, and he finds a chair and hits the other guy, and bing, bang, boom, it's over. This is not, Sean and Angle or anything like that, but at the same time, it's exactly what that crowd wanted to see, and that's what's important.
Yeah, simple formula, right? The kind of cocky hot shot, getting his comeuppance against the grizzled kind of legend figure who is grizzled in every which way. So everything about his performance is grizzled,
At the end, when his hair, when the comb back has completely come undone, and it's just like a fucking dinosaur egg peeking out the back of his head, getting out of the cage. It's
incredible.
And in real time, if you ask me, I would assume that was his last match. But then I remembered he was at the WrestleMania 2 Battle Royal, and he wrestled 20 or 30 more times after this.
It's so weird because I always forget he was around as much as he was. I don't think of it that way.
He had a program with Savage the same year.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. And since you brought that up, it's when Savage. I don't remember who Savage injures, but Bruno's interviewing him. Bruno's got the fucking the red WWF Shriners coat on, and Savage just like, "That's right, Macho Man Randy Savage," and Bruno goes, "You're proud of it, you slime," and then grabs him by the throat and starts shaking him back and forth.
I love the angle. Yeah.
But Bruno's last match was in August of 1987, where he teamed with Hulk Hogan at a house show in Baltimore as they took on King Kong Bundy and the One Man Gang.
Oh my god.
What was Bruno's spot in that match?
That's crazy, man. They didn't even give him a guy who could like bump for him, you know?
Exactly. Like, I guess it was Futures Now, old man. You're going to work into Hot Tag Hogan. And then Terry came in and slammed them both.
Yeah, something like that. I may have to seek that one out. Hopefully there's a fan cam. Hopefully we can get our hands on it.
John Keating took it.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll have to investigate. Any other hits we'd like to call up this? I love the match with Adonis. That his last match from WrestleMania 3, right? WrestleMania 3.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And the crowd bought that it was his retirement because that's how much
Yes.
of it's. I always say the WrestleMania 13 was Undertaker's thank you run, and he wrestled for another fucking 25 years.
There is a 6-man tag before WrestleMania 3 that is incredible. It's a 6-man elimination tag. I do not remember the.
Is it the one with
people in it.
Savage and Steamboat in it?
Yes, I think
Yeah.
so. I think so.
Did you see the story he told about like when the John Carpenter thing came together? Have you ever seen that, Alex? He's like his
Perhaps.
agent tells him like, John Carpenter wants me. He's like, who the fuck is that? And he's explaining it being Roddy, and he's like, listen, man, I was in a time warp. I was doing wrestling. When you're doing wrestling, you don't know what's going on elsewhere. It's like, all right, man, I guess. Like, this is 1987. Like,
And I've seen fucking Johnny Carpenter talks about like he, Pulp Fiction Travolta style. He had Piper in mind for that role, and like he was just.
yeah.
It's so fascinating to me that like the true artists of that era were influenced by pro wrestling. Carpenter was a big Piper fan. If I remember correctly, the interview I read with him once, he said, I'm not a wrestling fan, but I'm a Roddy Piper fan. Like I saw him on TV and he was very captivating. And that was David Letterman always said one of his early influences was Bobby Heenan. Like I'm not a wrestling fan, but this guy was an influence on me. And it's so fascinating to think in those terms of back when wrestlers were treated
That's
that way.
crazy
But all right,
because that makes
Incredible.
sense. Sorry, because I just thought about because Letterman's an Indiana guy, right?
Oh yeah.
yeah.
And Heenan would have been in WWA, whatever it was.
Mhm.
Okay, yeah. I never knew that. That's cool. Yeah.
Tremendous.
The 6-man in question was Adrian Adonis, Harley Race, and Randy Savage versus Steamboat Piper and JYD.
Yes.
It says it's a WWE on MSG Network, so that you can probably find that in the old school section of your
Mhm.
Peacock or WWE Network.
Yeah, that's out there for sure.
I forgot to reference in the first act. We do need to call out Piper. Very little of it exists on film. His run in Mexico, but the match he had with Chavo Guerrero at the Olympic Auditorium in 1978 was fantastic. And thank you to the incomparable Roy Lucier that exists on YouTube for free. But yeah, the Adonis match from this era is a lot of fun, dude. I think the main event of WrestleMania 1 is a lot of fun.
Yes.
And Piper, I can't think of any off the top of my head because they were Piper matches, so they were all non-finishes. But like, you watch a lot of those early Saturday Night's main events. I mean, they're not all sunshine and rainbows, but there's a lot of good shit to take away from those. And if you can find the original broadcasts of them with all the original music, there's such a fun like time period piece.
Absolutely. The Orndorff series is worth shouting out.
Yes, all those
Yeah.
matches are really good. He has a really good match with the Tonga Kid.
Yes.
That's
What
like,
year is that? Is that
mixed
85?
in- That's 84, I believe. It's kind of mixed in with the Snuka feud. It's really
Right.
good. Like it's really good.
Tremendous stuff. All right, that covers the most kind of iconic portion of Piper's career. Now it's time to talk about my personal favorite. And based on what Alex was saying earlier, I think he's in a similar boat. If there's one thing I love, and Bob and I, we shared this recently with similar great Alexa Bliss, is when a wrestler stops giving a shit, but is a babyface because they've been around long enough and inexplicably has good matches. This is where we're at with Roddy Raw. This is where we're at. He's back It is 1991 here for our first match. And he is positioned to like prepare Flair for Hogan, which doesn't really happen. It kind of happens, but not, like that's basically the role he's put in, which is, I'm sure he felt the same way. But I remember seeing an interview where he talked about it. And he was like, shrugged his shoulders and talked about how wrestling was real, the usual. But what you have here as we get into Act 3 is Ric Flair versus Roddy Piper at Madison Square Garden. Now, there's so much here context-wise, right? Two kings of like Mid-Atlantic wrestling, right? It goes without saying. Roddy moved on in 1984. These two haven't shared a ring since 83. Flair stayed Ric Flair throughout that whole time. As Crockett expanded, he expanded with it. I think Flair, Gorilla says it's his MSG debut, but I think it's his first match at the Gardens. It's 1976. So it might as well be his MSG debut, right? Because that's a different Ric Flair altogether.
That was one of my notes. I was going to ask one of y'all to clarify that because when he said that, I was like, that doesn't seem right.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
Okay, have y'all seen the angle that sort of sets up this program? It's amazing.
Yeah, it's great. It's tremendous.
Flair gets like under Piper's skin, and Piper swings a chair and fucking hits Vince.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, I have seen that.
Have you seen this?
It's awesome. Yeah. Oh yes, it's tremendous, Oracle. Absolutely.
I lost.
There he is.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. I'm good. Yeah,
it's
I'm
tremendous.
back.
I've always been surprised they didn't go to this for a big pay-per-view match.
Yeah.
See, again, this is where that like canon thing is weird, then, right? Because like, yeah, we run at the Garden. It's like, yeah, I know, but why don't you do it like SummerSlam or something? I don't know, man, or like Survivor Series or the Rumble, whatever.
Well, they did have competing teams at Survivor Series '91.
Right. They did. You're right. Yeah. Of course. Yes, I forgot about that. And they have a great moment in the Rumble. My God, do they have a great moment in the Rumble, right? Flair's big sell for Piper coming out. This is such a cool moment in time. The atmosphere for this is awesome. And even though it's the exact match you're imagining, it's just the guys playing their hits in front of the Garden, the crowd is loving it. And this is a great example of why guys need to move on. Because Flair's, I'm not going to, Jim Herd fucked up with Flair, no, unquestionably. I'm not going to sit here and say Jim Herd was right. But anyone who's seen 1990, 1991 Flair in WCW, it was over, bro. He didn't need to be the top heel in WCW anymore. They'd seen his act. They wanted to cheer him. He didn't want to be cheered. And this is a great example of why you need to do other things sometimes, because he plays the exact same fucking music here at the Garden, but they are like, it's working again because they're new to it in some way, right? Like they're seeing it in person for the first time. He's doing it against a fresh opponent, so on and so forth,
I feel we may have seen something similar to this in recent wrestling history. Yeah.
I'm telling you, man, there's I can't believe how few guys get there's something to be said for this, but that's the story of the match to me anyway. Alex, what did you make of Piper and Flair here at MSG?
Man, just think about, again, selfishly as a wrestling fan, my first thought is like, man, think about you just lived in New York and you got to see this wrestling show that no one else in the world got to see.
Right.
It's just like this shit for you. First thing, Vladimir front row with his hot rod tank top on. God bless that guy. Every day hope we're getting closer to the documentary release. We'll see. Everything you said's right. The crowd was really excited to see, like, when I think Fink starts before the music. It's from Charlotte, North Carolina, and like there's an audible like from the crowd. Here comes Ric Flair. MSG debut. We talked about that. Dude, Al Hayes is fired up in this match. I don't know what was going on, or if they were having some fun in the studio or whatnot, but man, he is not the side. So him and Gorilla are just Gorilla's, the straight man here, which is usually the opposite, and Al's just fired the fuck up. The biggest pop for me in the entire match, and again, both these guys still had a lot of gas in the tank, were great, but their prime was past them. So when they pulled off the bridge spot, like late into the match, I let out an audible cheer. I was a big fan of that. It's what you said. What you'd expect from this match is what it is, but it's really cool to see it happen in MSG, and it's cool because it wasn't a WWF produced show. It looks like an NWA match because the big lighting rig isn't there. It's just like the house show lighting and shit. So it's on YouTube. You can find it. It's a fun watch, easy watch.
Absolutely. Speaking of Lord Alfred Hayes, when Piper goes and retrieves the steel chair, he just pulls it out from under poor Alfred's. He just pulls it out from under him, and fucking Hayes he falls over. Did you see him? It was incredible. Poor dude knocked him over getting this.
It was in the middle of saying promotional consideration paid for by the following.
I'm watching a lot of the Coliseum video stuff from this time frame. I think Hayes was just like a big Flair mark because he always is like this for Flair's matches, and he's never like this for anything else, as you just got into. But I don't know. He's into this. Ric Flair swings one of the funniest chair shots ever in this match. He like just pushes it at Piper's head. Yeah, it's really cool deal. Oracle, what did you make of this one, mate?
This was super fun. I just love the setting and just the atmosphere of the match, and like watching the fans in the front row who are like WWF fans and we're popping huge for Piper. Like when Piper gets on the turnbuckle and Flair like shoves him, whatever, and then Piper slaps the shit out of him. There's this guy up there to the exit side who just loses his fucking mind. That Piper's like slapping the taste out of Flair's
It's so
mouth.
awesome.
Like, it's just great, man. Like Flair just, Flair always, got up weird because he always, with his back, he always would land on his side for the back body.
Yeah.
But he really had to put himself over for the back body drop he took in this one because,
Yeah.
I guess he went up I guess he stopped his momentum before he went up or something.
For sure.
He went up straight and he really had to go over for that one. But this was a lot of fun, man. Just a ton of fun. Piper pulls out the first, or at least
Oh, it is an insane Piper strike
which
sequence.
pops me every time he does it.
Yeah.
And the crowd eats it up.
What about when the referee gets between them and Ric Flair throws like an uppercut and Piper bumps and Lord Alfred goes, he's got a dig on him. He says about Flair. he goes, incredible hand speed. Ric Flair.
Incredible hand speed for Piper. I can't
It's
get
so
it out.
funny, bro.
Lord Alfred.
The way he says it, he's so into this match, bro. He's calling it like it's fucking Ollie Frazier.
It's super fun.
Yeah.
Man, the first time I watched this match was a long time ago in WWF 24/7, years ago. Probably when I was in like fucking 7th grade. But yeah, this match still holds up as a super fun match, and it's a program in the setting of WWF. I kind of wish they'd went more with.
Me too.
They have a great interaction in the '92 Rumble as well, but it's a shame it was kind of cut off and they went along and did other things. But for that October-November period they were doing this program, it was 91 WWF going all the way into WrestleMania 8. 92 is awesome anyways. That's my favorite period of classic WWF.
Yeah.
So I like pretty much all the big feuds and stories from that era, but this feud's one of my personal favorites, and this match is probably the highlight of that in terms of it's being featured.
I mean, this dynamic just works, right? I mean, this is Piper's best stuff in WCW in ring is with Flair. I think it's fair to say. What's the singles match they have?
That's the beach where they just cheat the whole time.
Cheat,
and
yes,
blow and
yeah.
poke and pull hair. It's
It's
awesome.
really fun. Yeah, really fun. Obviously, by that point, they're both a lot deeper in the game.
Potential hot take, real quick. I kind of like Jim Johnston's Ric Flair theme better than Space Odyssey.
That's unfortunate. That's very unfortunate.
Come on.
Every time I hear that, I get so mad every time it plays on those colors. They've edited it out of. I think they've switched it out of Mania, right? I think they've edited it out and just put in Space Odyssey.
I hate that shit. Like the ridiculous, dude, for a while there, even though they own the rights to, I talked about this on the fucking Goldberg episode when they would use the WWE theme in the old Goldberg matches, and even though they had rights to it, it's exactly what you're talking about. It's like you own that song.
I understand why they don't do it, but I wish they would just go ahead and play like the backwards "Smells Like Teen Spirit" for DDP. Although the one they play is pretty good, is a pretty good
Yeah,
dub.
it's close. Yeah.
But
You know
like,
the
I wish
story
they
on
would
that,
play
right?
and the backwards even flow for Jericho and shit like that. Because
Well, there's two stories on that. Is one, Jimmy Hart, I think, owns those.
Mm.
And then
Beast.
the other one, I think it's Jimmy Hart. The other one was DDP and Foo Fighters were on Total Request Live at the same time. And when DDP came out and they played his WCW theme, Dave Grohl went, "Hold on a minute," said, "You're using this on TV every week? I think we need to have a talk." So that's how that went.
My God.
Yeah.
That is incredible. I had no idea. Bob, it is well known that Ric Flair is officially your favorite wrestler ever. That has been decided in podcast form.
It's true.
So I'm sure you were happy seeing it the dub here. What did you make of the match, mate?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. You guys kind of covered it all, but like the environment just unmatched. Like the crowd's just going crazy for it. And you look at the rest of this show, it wasn't great, so I get why they were fired up for this one. But yeah, just a great time, man.
What went before this? You did a tweet. What was the match?
British Bulldog IRS 20-minute time limit draw.
That's disgusting, man.
Is this in the old school section, or did you watch the whole show, Bob?
No, I was looking at it on Cage Match. I didn't watch it all, but it is on the network if you want to watch a 20-minute match with those two.
Bob, did this remind you of Alexa Bliss versus Io Sky from October 2022?
I mean, it didn't until you brought it up, but yeah, kind of.
Yeah. There's a lot of Ric Flair and Io Sky is a pretty kind of. I see it. I think. Or you see the picture I'm painting here, right? It's good stuff.
Sure.
Similar atmosphere. Okay, it's time. It's time to do our favorite thing. It's time to talk about Bret the Hitman Hart.
Oh man.
Here we go.
When you were Joe so graciously reminding me and the viewers that the Grin Grappler will go on, I wanted to cut you off and say we just need to make sure that Bobby doesn't take his ball and go home again. And since Bret Hart's coming up now, I think it's appropriate.
Yeah, well, sometimes the ego gets in the way, right, Bob?
Yeah.
The old pay's gonna have to go up for Bobby, unfortunately, but we'll live. It's fine.
Dude, he badmouthed the fans, and then ratings went down when he wasn't here. So it got to bring him back. He's CM Punk,
Bob never went backstage at Wrestling Inc. I don't know what you're talking about. So this is a famous deal. It's one of my favorite WWF matches ever. Well, let's quickly talk about, because I know, Alex, you wanted to talk about the Mountie match. Like, even just briefly, it's worth doing as a bonus feature. So the deal is the Mountie beats Bret 2 days before the Rumble, right? And there's some shenanigans at play, and Roddy comes down, and Roddy does it's so great the way he does the angle. He's just like, enough
Bret
is
almost
enough.
jumped at WCW at the time, so there was
He
a
did.
Yeah.
too.
That's why he's the only guy from that era that's not in the Rumble match itself, because like that Rumble match has the most ridiculous lineup ever, and it's not Bret, because as conveniently left out of the retellings of history, Bret almost jumped ship here.
He did, yeah. I think he talks about it in his book, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. And that sets up this deal with the Rumble, which we'll start with just because it's like a 5-minute match and it just rules. Roddy just beats him. Fucking awesome. 2-day title run. Alex, I know you wanted to give this one some love, so quickly before we get to Bret, the Mountie dropping the belt to Roddy here at the Rumble. What did you think?
Moreover, I wanted to talk about this because what precedes the match is my definitive Roddy Piper promo. Well, we're dealing with one of the original Village people here, with his maid Jimmy Hart kissing the belt, leaving all that lipstick on it. That's, dude, this promo, when Piper passed, it's what I post on all my social media at the end. One, he has the line of, the Mountie said he came here to take my integrity. It's like Jacques Cousteau trying to find a dry spot in the ocean. I ain't got no damn integrity. How do you think I got so far? And then he tells the Mountie, he says, I think you've been doing all the dreaming, and I think it's been all wet too. And then Mean Gene goes, on that note, back to the ringside. The promo before it is phenomenal, dude. Jock is such a piece of shit that sometimes I forget how like just good he was as just an animated bad guy in the ring. Mountie had a banger theme too, but it's just fun. Piper beats him up. The heel shenanigans don't work, and then they have this great kind of diversion for the finish where it looks like Jimmy's getting ready to hand off the cattle prod, but then Jock just goes to sleep. He puts him out in the sleeper hold, and the crowd goes nuts. It's 5 minutes. It's a lot of fun. This feud almost also had might have been a Saturday Night's Main Event where Piper wore that wetsuit that said shockproof on it, and the cattle prod didn't work on him anymore. It's like I said, with how I associate Piper, the run of his career and him with the IC title, this is kind of obviously what sets up one of my favorite matches of all time, and that's kind of how we get there. And the promos are fun, the match is fun, and it kind of sets up Piper for the Rumble because the crowd thinks he has a lot of momentum coming into the Rumble match later. So for like arguably the greatest Rumble match ever, it's kind of a fun precursor.
Absolutely.
Speaking of Jacques Rougeau, how much do you think I'd have to pay Terry to let me pin him?
10 grand, brother. I sometimes go back and watch that on YouTube, and Terry of course kicks out at 3.00001 and then gets up like, brother, like he falls at the end of Platoon. But
That's quite the
Jacques,
deal.
Jacques is the guy who could find a screen cap of him flexing on CNN the day after Chris Benoit's family was found. He was trying to get a booking by going on like some Canadian news show that they're like, we got to go. And he's just like in the background flexing. So that's what kind of dude Jacques Rougeau is.
Okay, so that brings us to WrestleMania. And it's a very famous babyface match, a very rare babyface match for the time. Obviously, there's the famous example is Hogan and Warrior, but like this is rare for the time, and you have a very memorable pre-match promo in which Roddy is full Roddy, talking about his history of Brett, and Brett's completely unfazed by this, and then he like reaches out to his face, and Brett's like all serious, and Piper's just being a complete dick without being a dick at all. He's incredible here.
Why don't you keep your hands to yourself?
Yeah, indeed. Which Brett, interestingly enough, Brett kind of recreated this, or tried to, at least with Hennig at King of the Ring 93, right? Which is the next big babyface match that Brett works. So that deal where it's like, my dad could beat your dad. It's actually really cool, that one also. It's a little bit of a formula there. Man, this is such a beautiful match. This thing's like 13 minutes long, and there is such depth to the story they tell. It's like, I honestly can't. I have no comparison with this. I'm not saying it's the best wrestling match ever. But what I'm getting at, folks, is I can't think of a match with this runtime that achieves as much as this does and has the depth that this does without getting lost in its own bullshit at any point. It never feels like they're hitting you over the head with it or doing monologuing or yelling into you what the story is supposed to be. It's just perfect. It is just, every time I watch it blows me away. Bobby, had you seen Brett and Piper before? And what did you make of it on this latest watch?
I had seen it before. Still, just as good as the first time, kind of for the reasons that you outlined. Like, they tell such a nice story, and like, the ring bell part obviously is the one that sticks out to everyone, where Piper just can't bring himself to do it. I am curious as to what you guys think about the finish, because I've seen people go kind of back and forth on it. I think it's fine. Like, people are mad it's not like as definitive as it could be, I guess. But like, for a match like that, I think it's a really good way to do it.
Who's mad?
It was a lot of people on Cage Match, but I mean, other
They
than
want to
that,
fight?
well, yeah, I guess so.
This
Man.
is one of the best finishes in wrestling history.
I think so.
It's a classic Brett finish. Every
This is one
big
of the
Brett
best
match.
finishes
Every
ever.
big.
No, I agree. I was surprised.
Every big Brett match has like a finish like that.
Mhm.
But not just that. The whole point of the match is the finish.
Yeah.
Because the point is that Roddy, who is a villain at heart, has changed.
Mm-hmm.
And he's okay with it. That's the point. Like, the seconds after the match are as important as the match, because he makes the right decision and it costs him his belt. And he's okay with that because he's not that dude anymore. That's this is his last match as a full-time wrestler, basically.
Yeah.
This is the end of Roddy. And the point of the match is once upon a time, Roddy Piper would have used the ring bell and stayed champ, but that's not who he is anymore.
Mhm.
And that may mean that he can't be the IC champ, but he's okay with it. He'll ride off into the sunset with his head held high. That's the point, you know. It's like, to me, I don't know, man. I mean, maybe it would have been cool if you know, Brett would have pinned him with a brainbuster or something, but like, I think this achieved a lot more.
Yeah. No, I agree.
I fucking love the finish, but nonetheless, the Oracle of Wrestling. What do you make of the match, mate?
Oh man, classic match, man. I forgot how good this was. This is fucking
Yeah.
incredible. Brett sneaking in that blade job, bleeding everywhere, his comeback is awesome, man. Like just the urgency he puts into his
So sharp.
Brett just he's such a brilliant wrestler because he's the perfect example of knowing how to do WWF style, but also making it make sense. He does hit the same moves, but he knows how to do it in a way where it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And he does it in a way he knows how to change it up, or he knows how to change the urgency to it. And he does that here. He's desperate, right? He wants to beat his mentor and his friend. He's hurt. He's trying to win. It's I don't know, man. It's just great stuff. And the finish, of course, is last couple minutes with the ring bell drama, and then the finish is, of course, an absolutely tremendous finish. Piper looking up and like the crowd kind of not responding to it at first, and then
good, man.
Fink, who, shout out to Finkel, who always had the best, and new, Intercontinental Champion. Huge pop for that. Great post match. Just I don't know, man. This was I even now, even after watching all that stuff. I mean, the Briscoe, the whole thing, and then with Valentine, this still might be the best match of the 6 we watched. Yeah. This was pretty awesome.
Like again, I want to note, but obviously Roddy wrestles a lot after this and does a lot of stuff in WCW in particular. But like, this is the end, really. Like in actual truth, this is the end of him as a full-time wrestler. And like, what a way to finish that story. Our first match, he wins with the quarter, like the roller quarters, and here he is doing the right thing, even though it fucks him completely. And like, I saw an interview clip with Roddy where he talks about this match, and he was very much doing his like half work, half shoot thing that he does. But he did now, like the way he described it was pretty neat, where he said the reason they were booing so much when he had the ring bell was because like it was almost like they were saying, "Don't ruin such a beautiful match." That's such an awesome idea, man. This match is just gorgeous pro wrestling match, beautiful. Alex, I know you love this one. I'm sure you co-sign everything we've said, but your thoughts, mate?
Yeah, exactly. And this is mentioned at the beginning. WrestleMania 8 is the first vivid memories I have of watching WrestleMania, and my dad would always tape these off TV for me to have, and I literally have no idea how many times I watched this match in particular when I was a little kid. It was easily the first match to me that nailed home that any match can be great. It doesn't have to be the main event or like Hulk Hogan or something for it to be really important and matter. And I remember for years after this, I think till WrestleMania 9, Brett never wore the all paint gear again. Mm-hmm. So that in my mind, it always kind of stuck out for me. But yeah, the promo before, keep your hands to yourself. She used to put on that baloney, and it shows like what Piper was great at, because he's like annoying and then endearing, and then you think he's crazy. It nails that home, and I love just the one-upsmanship. And either guy's necessarily shitty about it, but just when Brett grabs him, I would have had you. Nuh-uh, not today. And Piper comes down to the ring like, he's a man on a mission. Heenan's on fire, not just in this match, but the show, when they have their stare down before the match. He's like, are they going to fight? Oh, no, just two ugly people staring at each other. That's nice. Bret Hart is such a good wrestler. He does a move like wrong as part of his strategy to lure someone into something. And that's the whole, he does that drop kick where he lands weird and then lures Piper into the small package. And that's where Piper gets pissed off, which eventually leads to the cheap shot uppercut. The reactions that Piper gets, especially in the first act of this match, are just fucking, he doesn't, when you're over, man. And some of his punches, but that one in particular, that uppercut when he tells Brett the oldest trick in the book, he says your shoe's untied, and Brett falls for it and he punches him in the face. That splits the crowd right there. At that point, they, there's a woman. When you watch matches as many times as I've seen this one, you kind of look for new things to find. And I found a woman that, like, when Brett started bleeding, was, like cowering in her seat and covering her mouth. And there's on the opposite hard cam, there's guys like just the dudes that are diehard Piper fans that are getting mad at like every bit of offense Brett has. One of them you can see he's probably like 9 rows back when Piper has the bell. He's standing on his chair going, "Hit him, hit him." Yes, it's a very simple idea of the story of friends, and then how much does that matter to me? Am I going to cheat to beat this guy or whatnot? And what happens is Piper shows remorse, but it doesn't immediately cost him. And then the finish, which is now, this is, Brett was the guy that did 2 finishes that are now like day one shit. The one with Davey at SummerSlam, and then this one are like, because this is how they beat Austin the first time they wrestled, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And they, we mentioned earlier, Austin Rock used this spot in their match at 17, and to read Meltzer's contemporary review of this match is really frustrating, especially like he gave this 3.5 stars.
Yeah.
And that's compared to like what he doles out now. And obviously we've talked about Dave kind of dug that hole for himself, but you view like his old reviews as kind of more, that's when Dave kind of knew the score, and not necessarily the case. The only thing in this that I kind of laugh at each time is when they do the double clothesline and Piper's on top and Heenan's like arguing that it should be a
He's
pinfall.
pinning him.
Yeah. And you can see one of the dudes I was talking about screaming at the Lego ref, like, "He's pinning him! Count him, damn it!"
Lego ref. What?
Dude, his hair. I remember it looks like a Lego piece. I remember watching
Even with his mustache too.
Yeah.
That's OSW. They were the ones that called that out. But yeah, Brett is just unbelievable in this, and so is Piper. I don't really know how this could have been better for what it was and where both guys were at their respective careers. And just the end of the match where Piper congratulates him, and just everything that was like attempting to be accomplished by this match was accomplished.
Absolutely. It's worth noting, Brett is one of wrestling's great kind of minds in terms of putting matches together in details, but Brett has pretty happily said this was Piper's match. It was the idea. He had a similar idea in mind before they sat down and talked about it. They were on the exact same page, but he didn't have to really give any, his part of it wasn't even had to be said because Piper did it for him. He said this was Roddy's match, and Roddy, kind of regularly would say to him it was his favorite match.
And also
it's
just
incredible.
like,
absolutely,
if you watch what Piper did at all the WrestleMania preceding this, for him to finally, it was like he finally lost. He didn't wrestle at the 3 before this, but at the same time, like Hogan beat him, and Brett beats him here. It's a big deal.
Absolutely, it really does feel like the end of the story. It's both parts of this finish are repeated so much now. Like Samoa Joe has lost to this finish like 400 times. So Shayna Baszler, I think. Shayna Baszler loses to this every time I watch the TV.
That's her match with Kyrie that I love. That's the finish of that, because Shayna gets her in the choke. And remember, she has to do a complete 180 and reposition so she can be in front of the hard cam and go, and then take
people also they redo the like, will he, won't he? I know that Punk and Hangman tried to do didn't they do it with the belt? They did the like, will he hit him, when it didn't work because no one understood what that meant, because why was Hangman going to be a heel? He's not Roddy Piper. The point I'm making is the finish works because of who is the whole point of Roddy Piper is that he's an anti-hero. He's like this lovable rogue. So that even if you love him, you know that he's like a villain at core. So when he has the bell, it's absolutely believable that he would just hit Brett over the head with it, right? That's the point. And like he doesn't, and that's that's why the place pops when he throws it away. So it's a finish that is often people attempt to recapture it without understanding why it worked. I think not the choke part. I mean the bell part. But yeah, it's incredible. Yeah, this is kind of Brett always talks glowingly about Piper and in terms of how much this match meant for him. And look, in fairness, I mean it's an example of why being selective of when you do jobs is important, because when it comes time, it means something when you do one, right? And it certainly meant something for Brett. And this shifted his career. I mean, he was already on a great track. Obviously, he beat Hennig the SummerSlam before and had already been IC champ. But this match was big for him. This transformed his trajectory, I think. So huge deal, classic
won the
match.
belt by the end of the year.
Absolutely, yeah.
Also worth calling out because it was the subject of laughter earlier. I've watched this match 50 times. You don't see where Brett blades. You don't see where he cuts around his eye or whatever. And if you've read his book, he says that him and Piper knew they were gonna get some color it was gonna pour hot beforehand, but when they got to the back to cover it up because he couldn't blade, they had like a pull apart in Gorilla, like they acted like live rounds being traded. And then about 30 minutes later, Ric Flair's doing this shit right in front of the camera.
Absolutely, brother. Because the story is that Flair wanted to blade. They said
no way.
And the story is they said he couldn't, and he said, because Brett did, he thought he could go away with it because he felt he saw Brett do it, because of course he did, But yeah, I mean, he was blade, bro. They could have said anything. Flair was blading at WrestleMania. There was no two ways about it. The funniest Flair Savage blade job will always be Starrcade 95, though, which Oracle Line talks about on a historical Oracle at some point or another.
That's the one where he goes from fucking Atlanta to Portland with 30 seconds left in the match, right?
This match is just about to finish. He starts bleeding, and then the show goes off the air with him like with the belt, just fucking ripped.
And you can tell they're like freaking out, like
incredible stuff. I believe the Oracle of Wrestling froze there, but nonetheless, Trent, this is answer a couple questions here as we wait for the return of the Oracle of Wrestling.
it's
We'll be back any moment now. Yes. Eric
I'm
Bischoff.
back. Oh yeah, I was thinking it was Bischoff, but it wasn't Bischoff. It was I guess Tony Schiavone, who was like, or maybe Bischoff did call that show. No, it would have been Tony, Bobby, and Dusty.
Yeah, and Dusty. Yeah. Good question here. Is Bob the only grinner who wouldn't hit another grinner with a title belt to win a match? It's a good question. Jack Crosby would hit. Jack Crosby don't give a shit. Yeah, anybody.
I would
any
With
time.
a belt shot. Yeah.
Wait, Bob, did you just threaten to fight Jack Crosby? Is that just
I will. I'm mad at him right now.
Why? What happened?
Talking about how Cross and Theory should win this stupid new title.
Oh, the new
Thanks.
title. That's gonna be. I'm not liking the direction they're going. Gimmick, man.
It's for the real workers, bro.
Made the ending of WrestleMania so much worse.
Don't ever ask, where does this rank for you guys on an all-time IC title match list? I think this is top 10. But yeah, this is actually the match that I'm most associated with that belt. And I have no nostalgia for it or anything like that. To me, it's just like the quintessential. Because I prefer this by quite a bit to Brett and Hennig. I much prefer Brett and Perfect's 93 match anyway, which obviously isn't for the belt. But like, when I think quintessential IC title matches, this is where I actually go personally. But I don't know.
Yeah, Bob, both Joe and I prefer their 93 match over the 91. You would have known that if you would have tuned in or shown up for the Bret Hart Grin Grappler.
True. Sorry.
I heard you didn't. I'm sure you knew it all already. But anyway, this is my number 2 IC title match. And we've done my number 1 with RVD and Christian's ladder match from Raw 2003.
Yeah. I will say that, like,
Gunther about that. Yeah.
Gunther now owns like 8 of the top 10, if I'm being real.
Dude,
the
that guy,
Mania match, he's incredible, bro.
I'm just thinking in my brain of like what I watched when I was younger. But obviously, yes, that I had an out of body experience in SoFi Stadium watching that triple threat. And dude, Gunther and his title defenses, this guy already has an all-time catalog. I know we're not here to talk about him, but I don't think it's vent about this to some people. Like after that triple threat match, I'm like, this guy's been on the main roster for what, a year and a half, and he already has like one of the best catalogs of any wrestler they've ever had.
He is genuinely one of the best wrestlers ever. Like
Yes.
legitimately, he's one of the best wrestlers ever lived. And
Yes.
I know that's like we all do our thing with hyperbole, but like that's actually the case with him. And while I get what we all loved what he was before, but genuinely, this current run is so great that no matter what happens from here, the rest of that dude's life, he's going to be signing replica IC title belts. It's that good because, like Alex, the way you're talking about what we just reviewed, I truly believe that in 20 years there will be people that grew up on fucking Gunther IC matches that will remember him that way, and that's awesome. You know, as people that appreciate him before, that's so cool.
Absolutely. And yeah, not to get too much on him, but the whole thing when they started, like, his transformation to me was like coming from a place of like how I imagine Shane Douglas fans felt in '95. It's like, oh, they're going to take away everything that makes him special, and in a way they kind of did. But then his ability to adapt, and he's doing the best shit he's ever done now, and still just being a big dude who beats the shit out of people. It's I had to check myself the other day because I was like, just what you said. He's literally. I was telling myself, like watching. Talking to somebody, that he's one of the best wrestlers that's ever lived, and I was like, is that true? But no, it really fucking is. Absolutely,
he really is special. He'd actually be a great episode of this show one day. We might have to circle back to that.
PCO.
Other matches from this era. The Hennig match from the Garden the year before the Flair one, October 1990. No, I think it's December 1990. Is really strong.
Yeah.
We almost put that on here, but I think Alex, you said it right. We needed some Flair lore, and I agree with your assessment. I think we did, but that one needs to be shouted out. He has a match with Shawn on TV too, right? Is that Primetime Wrestling? They have a match, him and Shawn, around this time. There's one they have that's really strong.
He and Savage have a fun match where Piper just messes with Sherry the entire time.
That tracks,
yeah.
Man, you can never accuse Sherry of not earning her nice fucking pay, right? She was always involved in those matches.
Yeah.
There's a Flair Steamboat match when Sherry's with Rick, where like the whole match is just Sherry spots, and it's like, I guess, sure.
Was that? I'm trying. There's some Saturday Night's Main Event where Piper takes a broomstick like it's his dick and chases her around. Is that one or something else?
My God. Feels like detail you'd remember, Oracle, quite frankly.
Yeah, I remember that. And I remember he was the person I figured out who Saddam Hussein was, because when he's bad-mouthing Saddam Hussein, I asked my dad, who's that? He's like, who's talking about Saddam Hussein on wrestling? Okay, Piper's not in it. But if you've never seen Virgil versus Ted DiBiase from the 91 SummerSlam, Piper plays a very integral role in that and does an incredible job of he's the commentator that's like cheering on Virgil, and the crowd notices he's cheering on Virgil, and he like to the point where he's standing up and like, yeah, get him, but does enough to like put more attention on the match, but not on himself. It's a master class in like the rub or whatever phraseology you want to use.
Absolutely. Okay. Let's put a bow on this this episode of Green Growler before we look ahead to next month. Final thoughts, Bob. I'll start with you. Final thoughts on Rowdy Roddy Piper, mate.
Yeah, this was awesome, and like I said, just to kind of be exposed to all that stuff that I'd never seen before, has me wanting to go back and watch more. I didn't realize how much of that like old school territory stuff was on the network, so it's definitely something I could dive deeper into. The only match that I had to go outside the network for this was the War to Settle the Score, and I mean, I didn't even actually have to. I just did. And it just, I didn't know I didn't have to till right now, but, either way. Yeah, just a great pick, man. And, like, we made the right choice. We could have done John Cena. We could have done Randy Orton, but this was much more fulfilling.
That was nice. Put us over, too. Pat us on the back. Good stuff, Bob. I'm with you actually. I think of all the Green Grapplers we've done, Roddy is the one that I'm least like truly familiar with. Beyond, I know a lot of Roddy's work, but I've not actually watched a lot of it closely. And this changed that a little bit. I'm with you, Bob. I'm going to try and do a bit more because I do thoroughly enjoy him. And he's definitely someone who the sort of mythology, the aura, the stories that come with Roddy are part of the charm to me. I mean, it's silly, but the Hogan stuff is like. That's like half my fandom is him not doing a job for Hogan. That's so fucking awesome.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
And you brought it up at the beginning too. Like the longest match you're going to get out of him is probably like 20 minutes or so, and that's
Yeah.
a rarity. So like, if you're a type of person who doesn't want to go watch these hour-long matches to really get into these people, he's a really good guy to do that with.
Honestly, you could just watch promo compilations, right? I mean, on it, that would do most of the work. That's what I think my main kind of, if I was to sum up Roddy Piper, it's one of the most electric personalities and dynamic promos ever. I think that's the best way. And a superstar, man. I still don't think he gets enough credit for just how big a star he was. Oracle, final thoughts on Roddy?
Yeah, his last, the Flair match at the Bash at the Beach is fun, but Bobby pointed out we were discussing matches, and I'm going to get to it soon enough on my watch. But the Slamboree 97 6-man is just, like, the atmosphere is great for it, and it's like pretty much the only time that the Wolfpack actually work as heels, because they couldn't get away with working baby faces in Charlotte, so they had to work heels because they were not going to get cheered in Charlotte. So they actually played their role to what they were supposed to, and bump and stooge for Flair, Piper, and Kevin Green, and it rules. And the baby faces go over clean, and it's it's just, I don't know. It's one of the great pay-per-view main events of the Nitro era, which there are few and far.
Indeed.
Those there's like two of them, and that's one of two or three that are actually good pay-per-view main events during that era. Let's see. There is. So when I was a kid, they did the Piper Jericho feud, or they teased it, and I badly wanted to see it. And in retrospect, I'm glad that we didn't see that match. But at the time, they did the warring segments or whatever and teased it. And then there's a segment, a Piper's Pit that he has with Cena, that people kind of circle as the last really good Piper segment. It was late 2010, right around the dumb Nexus feud Cena did, but there's a Piper's Pit before Survivor Series, and that's one on folks on DVD-VR always praise. So that was kind of one of his last great segments. But just to add a few more tidbits there.
Yeah, I'm with you. The one when he comes back to WWE in 03, the segment he does with Vince, where he's where he's talking about how he hates both Vince and Hogan, and they do the Mr. America's. He's really good in that first little burst. Obviously, a lot of it doesn't stick, but that stuff's really fun. Alex, final thoughts on Roddy Piper, mate?
Yeah, I wasn't sure if we were gonna do a separate little mini discussion about WCW. So as far as any matches after that 92, was it 94 or 3 when he had that god awful match with Lawler?
94.
94.
Yeah, 94.
Okay.
Yeah.
But aside from that, check out our Dustin Rhodes episode to hear me fucking drone on about how great the Hollywood Backlot Brawl is. And Starrcade 96 with Hogan is not a good match, but Piper's fantastic in that. When we say sometimes wrestling's not hard, but Piper's what we were talking about. He's so dramatic, and his histrionics are so heightened, but he pulls them off. And in that Starrcade 96 match, he walks through the curtain, doesn't break his gaze the entire time at Hogan. He just looks like he's going there to kill him. And then he gets in the ring, the crowd chanting, Roddy, Roddy. And then he becomes aware of what's going on, and then just kind of looks at the crowd and has this evil smile on his face. It's just tremendous work. And then I don't really remember much he did when he came back in 03. I was at Homecoming, where he had a Piper's Pit with Foley, I think. And it was just kind of hey, Roddy Piper's here. That's fun. Oh, and it was at 25 also when he wrestled in a T-shirt.
I will say his Mania segment with Austin is a good time. That's fun. Yeah.
So I guess we did get that Jericho match then, huh? I guess 6 years later.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah.
All for Mickey Rourke to come in there and throw a 1-2. And then just finishing my recommendations. If you've ever watched Legends House, kind of endearing. And then him and Jim Duggan developed this bromance throughout it that's just completely ridiculous, and there's this really touching moment at the end when they say goodbye. And then Piper and Flair were on Celebrity Wife Swap, and
Yes.
my buddy Reed and I watched it, and then immediately started it over and watched it again because like we were laughing so hard the whole like first run through of it.
I watched that live when it aired because we used to watch that with my dad. But it came on Monday Before Wrestling, didn't it?
Yeah, and like
Yeah.
you can tell like Ric Flair doesn't recognize half of his kids. Like one of them walks in and he's just like, "Hey there, little guy." Anyway,
You did a Vern impression.
no, Vern is like, well, Vern, you gotta be like Ronald Reagan. You gotta start everything with Vern. Well, and take 90%. Flair, like the only like Flair line I can really do that I'm not yelling is that promo he had from I think like Starrcade '94. He's like, right now just very focused, Darth Vader, and then Steamboat. That's the only like calm Flair that I can do.
Oh, is that the one where he's in the limo with Gene?
That's '93 Starrcade. Very worried about my family. My daughter
Yeah.
Ashley. Yeah.
Serious Flair is very different. Very
Yeah.
different.
But
There's a
Piper,
whole generation of fans who don't know Serious Flair now, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
But nonetheless,
yeah, it's sad. Grin Grappler, Ric Flair, just promos coming.
serious Ric Flair.
Probably done wrong. Must have done something right. You know what, Ric Flair? Hey, I don't know if Flair's on there, but Piper. Back to Piper. Piper's on Revenge, which is the greatest roster in the history of good wrestling video games. Showdown Legends of Wrestling has a better roster, but that game sucks. So Piper's on both of them. Piper, like I said, is he's a star, and I think that's kind of lost on a lot of people and is diluted with WWE's version of history. Kind of like Austin is also in a sense where like their version of history is Austin was no bigger than anybody else. It's just it was the product at the time. And I feel that's kind of Piper, the way WWE presents history is that Piper was one of Hogan's foes.
Mm-hmm.
He was Paul Orndorff, King Kong Bundy, Andre, etc.,
Right.
etc. Whereas Piper, I've come to that side of history that like the first WrestleMania, and like we talked about earlier, that rock and wrestling shit wouldn't have worked if Hogan didn't have as strong a foe as he did in Piper. And Piper was smart enough. Someone said this recently, a wrestler, and I don't remember who, but they said losses don't matter. And it's just like, dude, they do. I know every like fan and wrestler in today's climate have convinced themselves that losses don't matter, but they do. You know how I know? Because whoever beats Roman Reigns is going to be a big fucking deal. And that's kind of like Piper, this Brett thing we just talked about. When Brett was the guy that pinned Piper, it was like, holy shit. So Piper was a star. He was good at maintaining his credibility in the wrestling industry. And it was just the consummate worker. You would see him do interviews outside of wrestling, and you never knew like what was real and not with him. Because he could turn on the like, oh, I'm out of my character now. And then actually getting bell to bell when he got in the ring, the like quality could vary because we can't sit here like we did with Brett and say every match with the exception of like two were great. But when the big match came, he knew what to do, and more times than not really delivered. All these matches we talked about here, you know, the crowd loved, and then I would say at least half of them were fucking fantastic matches. And also just when he actually did like media appearances and shit, made he wasn't just a dumb wrestler. He was sharp and could like, you know, really, when he was on Bill Maher and he did that thing where he pulled down his pants when Bill Maher said wrestling was fake and showed him like his hip scar, his surgery scar from hip surgery, excuse me. And then later in the episode, he's like, you couldn't do what I do. And Bill Maher's like, yeah, well, I don't drop my pants in front of other men. And Piper, without missing a beat, goes, yeah, then how'd you get the job? Like he could always hold his own with people like in the real media. So I think worthy of all his fame and props that he gets, and maybe kind of underrated as a wrestler.
A very a touching sentiment. I will say, Alex, that you tweeting what you tweeted in the midst of this show is an incredible play. I just, I took a moment there and, said, just promote the show for a moment. I hit my timeline and I see him, Jacques Rougeau, staring back at me.
Because I feel like some people didn't believe me that actually happened, so I needed to make sure that there it was.
I'm glad you made it clear that was real. Okay, all right, folks. There it is. Grin Grappler, Rowdy Roddy Piper. Okay, let's look ahead to May here before we wrap. I have 6 wrestlers listed in front of me, and I actually have a couple very modern names, which I just thought was worth putting on there. I like to give Bob a lot of options after how violent he got last time. So here's what we got. We have got currently red hot movie star Dwayne The Rock Johnson. We have got someone who I think a lot of people wanted to be the episode last year and fell just short to Regal in Owen Hart. We have Big Van Vader, Andre the Giant, and our 2 sort of contemporary options, if intrigued, I don't know. We have Roman Reigns and Kevin Owens. Now, I put them on there. I love Roman's work. I don't think Kevin Owens intrigues me because I think there are like 3 clear acts you could do there.
And we could talk about Super Dragon, which I'm always down for.
Factual. Different flavor. I think Kevin's certainly qualified for an episode at this point. How long he's been fucking good at this deal. Roman, I'm not sure is necessary yet, but I feel like some of the older names are probably more interesting.
The
I'm
Vader
not sure.
one. The Vader one is. We could do something really good with Vader.
Yeah.
I'm not
Hold
sure
up.
I'm ready to talk about Roman Reigns.
1,000 days, fellas. 1,000 days. Brandon, brother. I don't think so. Vader, you're thinking, or is that the way you're leaning right now, Oracle? Vader?
I'm thinking Vader.
Bobby? We have to steer, you have to steer the ship on this one because otherwise you might not show up.
True. Yeah, honestly, any of the 5 except for Roman, just because I don't think there's really enough there. Well, there's enough there. It's
There's
all
a
been
lot.
covered. Yeah, but like, I'd be down for any of those 5. I think I would also probably lean Vader, just because like I've seen the hits, but there'd be a couple things that I haven't seen that I know would pop me quite a bit.
We be doing I definitely got some shoot style Vader. We're gonna be doing if we do it.
Rock's kind of like Roman, where we've kind of seen it all already. I don't know how much there is for us to really get into with that, but like, yeah, I would go with Vader, I think.
Vader. Alex, what are you thinking?
I mean to split the pie here, but that Owens talk was getting me pretty fired up because we could.
I kind of think, yeah,
do that. The Super Dragon Excalibur versus Kevin Steen and El Generico CZW Cage of Death match we would have to do, and then we would need to find some deep cuts for his WWE shit. So I'm thinking we dip into the Shane McMahon catalog.
Yeah, the one where me and Shane go 45 minutes in Hell in a Cell. Yeah, let's do that one.
I kind of think Kevin's interesting, man. He really is. I don't know.
I mean, Vader's awesome, but like, so my thought process on this is that Vader is going to come up in few tracks, and I don't know how often Kevin Steen will be coming up.
That
we do.
Fair.
Because last month we did Sting Vader. We've done Vader and Dustin before, and it's like.
So when we do Nobuhiko Takada, Vader will come up again.
There we go. I
guess we did.
Yeah, it's amazing.
We did Kevin on the Briscoes episode. My apologies. We did do Kevin on that. I don't know. Kevin is God, man. There's certainly enough depth to his catalog at this point. Good Lord, he just made event the last 2 WrestleManias.
True.
Yeah.
I think we rolled the dice. Alex, I'm firmly on this Kevin Owens deal. I feel like you're with me on this, right?
Yeah, and then Andre, immediately my thought was, didn't we already do Andre? But it's just he's come up so many times on other episodes.
Yeah.
I think I could assist or at least provide suggestions that we could build an interesting 3-part act with Kevin Steen / Owens.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm not too terribly familiar with his older stuff. A lot of it I've seen I've not cared for, but I'm willing to do. I mean, like again, I've not seen very much of it. I think I saw a couple of matches from like 2012 Ring of Honor, which is a bad sample size.
Oh,
Yeah.
So
Okay, yeah. So just knowing Devin's style of wrestling, I've already got a few that he's gonna have to watch now. But
I think this is gonna rule.
yeah,
Bob, are you on board? Or are you not gonna show up for this one?
No, it's fine with me.
You sure?
I'm
Didn't sound
sure.
like it was fine.
You know I'm a big Owens guy. I got the shirt. I got the action figure.
I got
Oh, you
the,
need-
got the shirt. I got the action figure.
Oh, you know I like a wrestler, man. I have both of those things.
There you go,
Hon-
folks.
dude. Honestly, what we could do is pre-Ring of Honor, and then WWE. We could,
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah,
Okay.
because originally when I thought about it, I was thinking we could do pre WWE. Because to me, his WWE run has two halves. It's like prize fighter, cool guy Kev, and then like where he's basically Mick Foley now is really what he is now. But I actually prefer if we just do WWE as one lump and looking at the rest of the stuff. Yeah. All right, there you go, folks. Kevin Owens up next. Kevin Steen, whoever you want to name that title. That it's probably gonna be Kevin Owens. Don't get mad at me when it's Kevin Owens. Okay, that's what he is now, folks. I'm sorry. Move on. It is what it is. Nonetheless, let's do some plugs.
It's Eddie with a Y.
Exactly. Let's do some plugs and promotions. Bobby, what do you got, mate? Anything to push?
No, not really. We'll do a Fed Dead at some point, I think. Maybe after Backlash now is the plan. Other than that, no, I don't know what we have coming up. It's new worlds for us, so
It's kind of cool.
it is actually, yeah.
The Oracle of Wrestling. Anything for yourself, mate?
I don't know. I might bug you sometime in May for a historical oracle.
Let's do it. Yeah, it's fine. That works for me. I'm going to be keeping the historical oracle alive in some form or fashion for sure, even if it's just monthly entries, right?
Mhm.
Keep it moving.
Mhm.
Alex, what's happening in the land of the contrarians, mate?
we just not yet, but this Friday we'll be launching part 1 of our Lindsay Lohan 4-part career retrospective, covering Freaky Friday, Mean Girls, and Herbie Fully Loaded, which was an interesting place for her to go after Mean Girls, considering the absolute phenomenon that was. But that we just did one of our noirs in The Long Goodbye, the Elliot Gould movie from the early 70s, and Riders of Justice, which is a fucking fantastic Danish movie with Mads Mikkelsen if you've never seen it. And you can find all that at wearethecontrarians.com, at Contrarian Prime on Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram, facebook.com/Contrarian Prime, and the Contrarians and any of your podcatchers. Always a pleasure.
Beautiful.
Yeah, appreciate you letting me come on and plug our stuff. And yeah, if we're if it's going to be intermittent come August, I am going to ask that we coordinate a grin along for the 10th anniversary of SummerSlam 2013, because that is my favorite wrestling show of all time.
That's a good call. We also have to do that. The show that you were at the Impact Zone where it caught fire.
Oh, Hard Justice 2006. I think that's on YouTube. So yeah, that'd be a good one.
What month was that? So we can anniversary it.
June or July.
All right, we'll look into that, folks. There's going to be a lot of grill along stuff because it's more, kind of stuff we can do loosely and hop on and talk shop. So, absolutely, stuff to look forward to. Lesnar and Punk. Don't watch that anytime. That's one of the great matches ever. I really believe that. But we'll cross that bridge on the CM Punk Grin Grappler that's coming soon. Folks, here's the deal. I'll be on WrestlePurious on Thursday to review Dynamite, I guess. Sure. And after that, I'm going to go to Paris, France to watch Cody Rhodes wrestle Finn Balor. The Good Brothers have been unbooked from that show,
Oh,
which is the most disgusting promotional tactic of the year thus far, but we'll leave that there. But nonetheless, I'll be there. And I may return with a stream of some sort, doing like an informal review of the Baron Corbin versus Rick Boogs match. I believe I'm getting treated to on that one. So also, I think Dominic is working Dexter Loomis, I think.
that Corbs Boogs match, you're looking at a 20-minute draw right there, brother.
Look, man, honestly, I'm enough of a sicko that would pop me just out of being there for it. I'm seeing the last night of the house show tour. That's always a treat because guys have either stopped caring or have locked their match into a point where it's actually good. So we'll see.
Those are for y'all as fun as I've only been to one of them here, but the last TV taping before the international tour, where like the dark main for a SmackDown taping I went to is Alberto Del Rio versus Dolph Ziggler in a no holds barred match that went 4 minutes, and like it was done, and they were breaking down the set as people were still leaving.
Tremendous. So that's later this week, and then after that, I'm going to try and kind of reset, and we'll figure out where we're at with the grin. There's going to be the grappler, obviously. Oracle and I are going to do historical Oracle. There may be a kind of old school grin along at some point, or even a modern one. I don't know yet. Going to keep our eyes on this New Japan show that Mercedes is working. But this will be the last Grin content for at least a week, I would say. So stay locked in at Late Night Grin. I'll try and update the Discord on occasion when we're doing stuff too. But we'll let it play out, basically, is the point. I will say I've got written reviews of all of the matches we covered here today going up on my little blog gimmick, which I'm just trying to stay active with and keep writing rap match reviews and popping myself. So if you're into that kind of thing, that'll be up tomorrow. I'll post some links on the Twitter. But stick with us. We hope everyone enjoyed this. It's been a hell of a time. Always have a blast for Green Grappler, and we look forward to next month. Kevin Owens, the show that may put Oracle in a place with Bob where he just doesn't show up sometimes. We'll see. Could change, but could be a 2-man show. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. But nonetheless, keep grinning, folks. All hail, and enjoy this outro.